Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if neglected Naruto was adopted by a dragon. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by Narhina and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1 Life Interrupted. It was midday, the sun was blocked behind the clouds. The wind was steady, the breeze had the scent of the sea on it. It was a beautiful day indeed. For one man, it was another day he was happy to be alive. His black hair that spiked up blew in the breeze, he had a cup of coffee in his hand as he looked over the sea from his porch. This man was shirtless. The only thing he was wearing was a pair of grey sweatpants. From his porch, he saw the bridge that held his name in honor of his youth. His house was situated in Nami no Kuni, a place that took him in because he was their hero. The cottage was built for him by the village's great builder. The man was sipping from his mug, enjoying his quiet morning for however long it lasted till his wives and children woke. Yes, he had more than one wife. He actually had 4, and some of them blessed him with children. Each of his wives held a piece of his heart and his wives loved him with all their hearts. He always wanted a big family and he got his wish. One of his wives who had blessed him with his oldest and was pregnant again, expecting their second. Well, one had yet to give him a child. It was that time when he was scared for his life, from the constant mood swings and the strange cravings, it was a tough time. That is not saying he is not going to stop trying to add to his family, and his wives were more than willing to help. It was at this moment when he sensed something. He focused for a moment and realized he sensed people coming. He quickly ran inside. 5 minutes later, he came out dressed and ready for action. He told his wives what was going on and told them to protect the children. He placed a barrier on the house and in a burst of speed, disappeared. After cottage, the path was a road of dirt that was kept clean. On the west side, which was surrounding woods, but to the east were the cliffs that overlooked the sea. On the road were 18 people walking up this path. On the heads of several of them were hit I-8s with a symbol for the Konoha no Sado. Along with them having on green sleeveless jackets that identified them as Chunin, some were Jounin. 3 members wore different clothing than the others. The first was an older man with attire consisted of a green short shirt kimono and matching pants, under which he wore mesh armor that is visible at his wrists and ankles. He also wears handguards, a black belt, Jetta sandals, and a red haori with 2 yellow circles on each side. He had a wart on the left side of his nose and waist-length spiky white hair that was tied back into a ponytail, with 2 shoulder-length bangs framing his face, and he wore a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil. This man was Jiraiya, the Todgama Sannin and self-proclaimed super pervert. Next to him was the man who was his former apprentice and now his leader of Konoha. This man has bright blue eyes and spiky blonde hair. The hair gave him jaw-length bangs framing his face. He wore a green flak jacket, blue hit I-8 and blue sandals. He is also wearing a short-sleeved long white haori over his clothing. The haori was decorated by red flame-like motifs on the edges, with the kanji for yondaime written vertically down the back. This was Minato Namikaze, the Kairoi Senki, the man who single-handedly brought an end to the Third Great Shinobi War. Minato came here today on a mission, both personal and professional. To get Ryu to join his village and try to bring his family back together, almost there, I hope I can fix this. Minato had a secret, he had a feeling that he knew who Ryu was, but he neglected to tell the group following him. The last was a woman who looked no older than 35, she has brown eyes and straight shoulder-length blonde hair that she usually keeps tied in 2 loose ponytails. She had a diamond-shaped seal on her head. She is wearing a grass-green haori with the kanji for gamble written on the back, inside a red circle. Underneath, she wears a grey kimono-style blouse with no sleeves, held closed by a broad dark bluish-grey obi that matches her pants. This caused her very impressive and massive bust to show more cleavage to everyone around. The one stealing glances was Jiraiya, even though he knew she would beat him within an inch of his life if she caught him. She is wearing open-toed, strappy black sandals with high heels. This was Tsunade, another of the Sannin and one of Jiraiya's former teammates. She had a sour look on her face. This is a big mistake. She thought she knew they were here to negotiate with this man who described him in the bingo book as the Ryu. Although she knew who this man was, the question was whether he would even hear them out. The reason she thought it was a mistake was the fact that they brought 10 extra people with them. The appearance of all these people looked more like they came looking for a fight and brought the additional people as a show of force. She was excited and scared at the same time to see what kind of man he had become. She smiled and remembered times she had with that little boy that squirmed into her heart. Those blue eyes and beautiful blonde hair, the boy who was just like her deceased brother. He had a will of refined steel, an attitude that made enemies wet themselves in fear. To a few, he showed a personality that was loving, caring, and an all-around enjoyable person to be around. Tsunade's musing was cut short when someone spoke out from the back group called out, "Sensei. How much longer?" Tsunade, along with Jiraiya and Minato, turned to see the whining coming from a long-haired blonde woman wearing a purple top and a purple skirt with mesh armor on her knees and elbow. A bang from her long blonde hair covered her right eye and reached down her back to her waist. She is the Yamanaka heir, Ino Yamanaka. She is a Chunin level ninja along with the rest of her former genin squad. Next to her was a big boned fellow from the Akimichi clan. He was clan heir to the Akimichi clan, Choji Akimichi. He is wearing a red suit with plated armor on his torso, arms, and upper legs, having the same kanji for food on the front. He is wearing a standard red forehead protector on his head. The last member is a stereotypical Nara. Shikamaru Nara is his name, and he had black hair up to the point it looks like a pineapple. He was wearing the standard black pants and a black shirt with his Chunin vest over his shirt. He had a bored expression on his, and under his breath, he muttered a quick troublesome, which didn't go unheard by Ino, and she pulled on his ear, making him cry in pain. "We will get there soon, Ino." The old man said to follow this path till we come across a cottage up here. The man who said this let out a sigh as he saw two former students acting like small children. This was the current head of the Sarutobi clan, Asuma Sarutobi Jounin to Ino, Choji, and Shikamaru. Asuma was a tall man, with brown eyes, olive skin, short black spiky hair, and a beard. His clothing consisted of the standard Konoha ninja uniform with the sleeves rolled up halfway, flak jacket, regular shinobi sandals, and forehead protector. He also wore a sash that had the kanji for fire marked on it around his waist, a pair of black bangles, and bandages wrapped around the arms of his sleeves. "You two knock it off. We are here on an important mission." A woman with red eyes yelled at the two younger adults. This woman was Kurenai Iki, or secretly Kurenai Sarutobi, is known to a select few, mostly the important higher-ups and friends. Kurenai is a fair-skinned woman of slender build. She has long black untamed hair reaching her upper back. Her outfit consists of a red mesh armor blouse with only the right sleeve visible. The material of the sleeve resembles bandages with a pattern on it similar to those of rose thorns. Her hands and upper thighs are also wrapped in bandages, and she wears the Konoha forehead protector and regular shinobi sandals. "Haha. You got chewed out," pointed a young man that red triangles on his cheeks. The dog next to him, which was as tall as his waist, barked in agreement with his partner. These two are Kiba Inuzuka and his canine partner Akimaru. Kiba was second in line to be the head to the Inuzuka clan behind his sister. Kiba is wearing a leather form-fitting black jacket with zips over the chest and sleeves, along with black pants and sandals. Kiba's brown spiked end was contained by his headband. Kiba was from Kurenai's former genin squad, so he knew the tongue lashing she could give. Kurenai was about to reprimand Kiba when a monotone voice beat her to it. "Kiba, you need to stop." "Why?" "Because we have traveled and all our nerves are shot, we don't need you to make things worse." That was Shino Aburam, the heir to the Aburam clan. He wears a jacket hanging down to his knees and the addition of a hood that obstructs his face even more and a satchel on his back. What made his outfit weird was the fact that he wears a flak jacket under his jacket. But the groups of Team Asuma and Kurenai at each other's throat, a new voice spoke up, "Yosh. This place is so youthful. Look, my eternal rival. This place is a beauty. It is one with nature. No wonder this man lives in this youthful place." The man with the booming voice has a shiny bowl-style haircut and remarkably thick eyebrows. He is wearing a green jumpsuit, orange striped leg warmers, and the standard Konoha flak jacket, which he usually leaves unzipped. His red forehead protector is around his waist like a belt. He was Konoha no Ketakaki Aoi MMJK, might guy, giving his friend rival his famous nice guy pose. You say something, guy," said a man with gravity-defying silver hair who had his face buried into a little orange book. This was the famous copy ninja Kakashi Haddock. He wears a flak jacket, dark blue pants, and a long-sleeved shirt, along with fingerless gloves with metal plates on the backhand. He also wears a mask that covers the lower part of his face, and his hit eye is crooked, so his left eye is covered. "Damn you, Kakashi, with your hip attitude." Guy dramatically fell to the ground, cursing his rival with tears in his eyes. "Do not worry, Guy-sensei, we will get this man to join us. If we cannot, I will run around the village on my hands 10 times, if I can't do that I will do 2000 push-up on my thumb, if I can't do that." The rant continued to come from this mini version of Guy. This was the proud pupil of Might Guy, Rock Lee. Lee was a miniature version of Guy down to the attitude, mannerisms, appearance, and shiny teeth. Lee was interrupted from his rant when a rolled-up scroll hit his head. "Lee. Knock it off. I would be surprised if the target didn't hear you from his house." The female member of Guy's team was Tenten. Her hair was done up into 2 large buns, making her look like a panda. She sports a long-sleeved, high-collared white blouse with maroon edges, black fingerless gloves, low-heeled sandals, and a black forehead protector. For pants, she wears maroon puffy Hakama-styled pants with the exposed parts covered in bandages and the shuriken holster removed. She is carrying a large scroll behind her back as well that holds all her tools and weapons. Their other teammate gave a heavy sigh to his teammate and sensei, but nevertheless kept his mouth shut, not having the energy to deal with both of them. This was Niji Hyuga. He had eyes that were wide as the moon and no pupils. He wore a white kimono shirt with long, loose sleeves, matching pants, a navy gray apron tied around his waist, and black shinobi sandals. Niji had his long brown hair frame his face. "How do you put up with them?" asked a proud voice. Niji looked over to the one who asked the question. He was Sasuke Uchiha, the last loyal Uchiha. He wore dark blue pants, over which hangs a blue cloth that covers him from his stomach to his knees, which he secures with a purple rope belt and a zippered, high-collared, short-sleeved shirt and blue wrist warmers. His black hair is blown back and is shaped to that of a duck's ass. On his back and his belt was a chakram secured but can be ready to us at a moment's notice. "I can ask you the same thing," Niji replied back, looking at his two teammates. One was a girl with flowing red hair that was in a high ponytail, that long enough to reach between her shoulder blades, wearing a white kimono top with a black mesh underneath the kimono top, and on the back was a red swirl with a red obi. She also wore black shinobi-style pants that stopped a little bit above the ankles, which were taped down the rest of the way to her ankles and heels. She had purple eyes and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. At her side strapped in her red obi was a katana with a red handle. The sword was an O-katana, and it was so long that it nearly was touching the ground. The blade has a purple hue on the sharp side of the blade. This was her mother's old sword Shinku no Shio, the sword that gave her mother her nickname. She is Narumi Uzumaki Namikaze, daughter of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, the Akai Chishio no Habanero. She was a confident girl with a happy-go-lucky attitude, and her dream was to be just like her father. She didn't hear what Sasuke and Niji talking, she was too busy glaring at the newest member of her team cell. The young man has short, straight black hair and dark eyes, which contrast with his pale skin. He is carrying a small backpack with his brush, scrolls, and ninja ink in it. He wears a short black and gray jacket with red straps. He gave the Uzumaki Namikaze a wave and a smile that was empty of emotion. His name was Sai, and he was here for one reason: to get this extraordinary man as an asset for his lord, Danzo Shimura, by any means necessary. "Would you please stop glaring at me with that ugly face of your..." This caused Narumi anger to rise and caused her to reach for him, ready to strangle him to death. That was then wrist was grabbed to stop her from doing any damage to her new teammate Narumi. "Please don't go killing the new member of the team," Kakashi said, not looking up from his book. Even though his voice didn't give any indication of it, he was disappointed in his student's action, and Narumi knew it. "Yes, Kakashi-sensei, sorry, Kakashi-sensei," Narumi said in a more calm voice, feeling sad that she caused her sensei Ani-chan. "Sai, please refrain from insulting your teammates. I won't be able to stop her from killing you every time." Kakashi gave a sideways glance with his nose still in his book, refusing to not finish this masterpiece that was this book. Sai gave a creepy smile and a stiff head nod, then pulled out his little book and pen to draw this scene before him. "Alright, everyone. We are almost there, so everyone best behavior. We need to." Minato started but was cut off when he sensed something coming at them and fast. The ones to notice were the Jounin senseis and the 2 Sannin. That was when a blur impacted the middle of the group, causing bits of earth and dirt to fly into the air. Everyone from the Konoha group covered their eyes from the fallout of the impact. When the dust settled, all eyes looked at what impacted them. What impacted them was a man who stood at impressive 6 feet tall. On his head was a black hood that traveled down around the neck and draped around his shoulders. From the back of the hood was a small cape that draped down to the small of his back. On the hood is an image of a dragon in white lines that traveled from the hood to the shoulders. It had claws on the part by his shoulder and the wings in the small cape. His outfit consists of a sleeveless gold-trimmed black waistcoat, open-collared one-sleeved long overcoat, which is tucked in and zipped, his entire right arm is exposed. On the lower part of his body is gold-trimmed, black cloth around his waist that reaches his knees, held by a brown leather belt with an oval-shaped silver buckle, white knee-length trousers with black ribbon ties, a thick black wristband on his left wrist and black open-toed sandals. 2. "You are on my land. Leave now," the hooded man said in a level voice. He knew who these people were, and he wanted them gone. He didn't care why they were here. "Hello, I am the Yondaime of Konoha, and I would like to..." Minato was about to continue his introduction and ask who this man was when he interrupted by the man before them. "I don't care who you and what you would like. I will tell you again. Leave," the man said in the same cold voice. His voice was giving off no emotion, but he was in a rage on the inside and was losing patience. He needed to keep a level head. With 4 high Jounin around, 2 Sannin and a cage-level shinobi here, and he knew that if he had to fight it, would be far from easy. This time it was Jiraiya who spoke up. "Listen, kid, we want to know if you are Ryu from the bingo book," he asked with a down-to-business tone. Jiraiya could sense the hostility coming off the man in front of them, and it already wasn't looking going their way. They needed this man, they did not need this man to be an enemy. If I tell, will you leave? The level-voiced man asked, turning his head to face the Gama-sanin. That answers that question, Jiraiya muttered out loud. You know, with someone with such a high bounty on your head, I thought you'd be older. He looked at the young man with a calculated gaze, and he saw that this man, while facing him, Minato and Tsunade was keeping tabs on the rest of the Konoha group to his back. I thought someone of your status would be more intimidating, Rai retorted back. He grinned as he said, guess a frog in kabuki makeup is not so scary up close. This caused Jiraiya to gain a tick mark on his head. Ryu displayed a smirk from within his hood, knowing he got under the Gama-sanin's skin. Listen, runt, it isn't frog it's toad. Insult them again, and we'll see if toads can kill a so-called dragon. Jiraiya steps forward to intimidate him, but the action didn't give the desired response. Ryu's action was instead of backing down, was to bring his uncovered arm up and gives the motion to tell him to bring it on. Enough. Jiraiya back off. Yelled Tsunade trying to defuse the situation that was started to build. Jiraiya looked towards her about to retort when he saw the promise of a beating if he didn't stop. Now, Ryu, as our leader was trying to say, we would like for you to join our village. To help us win this war. She looked at the cloaked man who took a couple seconds to respond. Hope was rising from the group when Ryu began to speak. No. Their hopes were dashed away with that single word. Why not? Yelled both Jiraiya, Minato, in front of him and Ino behind them. I don't have to, nor do I answer to you, Konoha, Ryu said. Please. We need you, we are offering you a place in our village. We could benefit from each other, Asuma pleaded. As if that was a gift or reward. I don't want or need anything from you or your village. Ryu retorted back at them. We can pay you. Tsunade blurted out. We will give you clan status. Called out Minato. We will give you some of our women to help with making that clan, Jiraiya yelled out while having a perverted look on his face. He got glares from all the females in his group. No, I do not want any of that, Ryu responded to that. Men then. Jiraiya yelled back. Hell, if he didn't want women, maybe he wanted the more masculine sex. What the hell is wrong with you? Damn perverted toad, Ryu fired back. We will allow you to be on the council, fired off Asuma. All the while, the group was offering him anything they could think of and it was starting to annoy him. These people couldn't take the hint. I say we force him. Yelled out Sasuke. His hand traveled to his sword and flicked it open so only a glint of the blade was showing. His eyes are now red with 3 slow spinning Tomo. You think you can take me, little Uchiha? Ryu now turned to face the other people of the Konoha group with his hand flexing. He knew he could take the team behind him with some work just because of the sheer number of them. The Jounin would be the hardest, but the rest would go down with ease if he hit hard and fast. Before the situation could be defused again, a monotone voice from the Konoha group spoke. I have a question. Ryu turned to look at the pale boy with the fake smile on his face. If you knew that we were coming, why not just let us come to you? You know that area up there better than down here. You had an advantage up there along with surprise and had time to set up an ambush. My question is, when you have all that advantage, why come here? Ryu's eyes narrowed at the pale boy. I will answer that for you, it's because you have something up there that you don't want us to see, Sai answered, finally opening his eyes slightly to show emotionless eyes. Ryu, in a burst of speed, was now in front of the group. His back to the path that leads to his cottage. He gave out a growl that sounded like a great beast's. It was a warning to the people in front of them. Every one of the Jounin and their teams armed themselves in response to his quick movement. You so much as think about, and I will be sending you all back to Konoha in pieces. Minato put his hand towards his group to halt them from attacking. I am also curious about what is up there, but Minato took a step forward that was until a fireball was launched at his feet. Take another step and I will burn you alive, Ryu said with an edge to his voice. Hey. Don't threaten my Tusan. Yelled Narumi as she came up to stand by her father, ready to protect him and kick this man's ass. You people came on my land and threatened me now. Who is the injured party? Ryu retorted back. He didn't want these two by his family, especially Minato, he wouldn't allow it. Ryu felt chakra being used and from the group, a bird of ink flew in the air and made its way towards Ryu's cottage. Sai was smirking until he saw that Ryu was now right in front of his bird with a lightning-enhanced fist and struck the bird with his fist. With the ink being water-based, the shock from the bird transferred to Sai, causing him to be stunned and then fall from the sky at a fast pace. Reacting fast, Kakashi raced to the trees, climbing up branches, then jumping from the tip of the tree and grabbed the falling boy. When the two landed, Tsunade immediately went to heal the boy. Anyone so much as thinks about taking another step, you will get worse than him, Ryu glared at them. He was in a fighting stance with his sleeved armed forwards with his palm up and lightning dancing his fingers. That's it. You asked for it. yelled Narumi as she made a cross shape with her pointer and middle finger on both hands. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 5 more Narumi appeared in puffs of smoke and charged at Ryu with kunai drawn. Clone 1 went for a quick swipe at his head. Ryu countered by grabbing her wrist and throwing her at another clone, causing both to puff away in a cloud of smoke. Clones 3 and 4 went for a crossing pattern to attack each side. Ryu fell to the ground performing a handstand and twisted like top, kicking both clones in the face, causing them to pop. That was when the final clone came up from the ground with a ball of blue energy, Rasengan. She shouted and thrusted forward, trying to hit him. Ryu leaned back into a back handspring, kicking the clone in the face and causing the blue ball of chakra to disappear. Ryu looked around for the original version of the girl when he heard a battle cry come from above. There was Narumi with her sword overhead ready to bring it down hard on her opponent. Ryu brought his uncovered arm up to block her sword. Narumi brought the sword down hard. There was a clang that now brought the attention to from the Konoha group. Some of the group were about to jump in if it wasn't for Minato putting giving them a silent command to stop. This isn't how I wanted this to go. I need to stop this before we lose all chances of getting him back. Minato was about to use flash to his daughter with his Hirashin no Jutsu when he saw his daughter look to be struggling. Back to the fight, Narumi brought the sword down on the man that blew her teammate out of the sky. When he brought his arm up, she thought it was just to lessen the damage to his body. What she wasn't expecting was for him to go and grab the blade with his hand. Narumi infused wind chakra in the sword, making the edge capable of cutting through flesh like wet paper. So when the blade was caught in hand, it caused her to be confused. That was when she saw the hand was covered in metal and had reptilian features. The hand had nails that now looked like claws, and the back of the hand had a scale pattern, and the hand looked like a smooth underbelly. When she tried to retract the blade from her opponent's hand, she found it stuck in a vice grip that was his hand. Ryu followed up quickly with a roundhouse to Narumi's stomach, causing her to get blown towards her group while skipping across the ground. Her father caught her and did a quick exam to see how the man was doing. Ryu took the sword by the handle now and threw it at a tree at the edge of the path and embedded it deep into the tree. The rest of the Konoha group drew weapons and were ready to charge. Ryu now conjured fire into his fist and gave out a bestial growl at the group. Minato was about to call a ceasefire, but that was when a green blur rushed past him and launched a kick at Ryu. Ryu blocked the kick, but his bones rattled like a bell. It was the mini green one. How unyouthful. Attacking the Heim like that. I will show you the ways of youth. Lee shouted as he continued to throw jabs and twisted with kicks. Ryu backpedaled while blocking the onslaught. He looked for an opening and found one. When Lee swung his leg looking to land a powerful roundhouse, Ryu leaned back, feeling the wind being cut above him. That was when he charged his fist with fire and struck. Lee was blasted back into his group. He was caught by his sensei who looked over the wound and saw part of his uniform was burned away and the flesh underneath the hole was burned and bruised. I now glared at the man who attacked his precious student. He put Lee in the care of Ino. Guy got into a Gunken stance, ready to charge. Now the rest of the group was no longer idle. Kakashi moved his headband, revealing a red eye in his right eye socket, Asuma took out his trusty trench knives, and Kurenai started to do hand signs for one of her more complex ninjutsu. Ryu moved fast, taking all the Jounin by surprise. First, hitting Kakashi in the face with an elbow that caused a nasty crunching sound. Next was Guy, who blocked a kick but was taken surprise by an impressive leg lock around the neck. Guy was then thrown off the cliff while his head was still in the leg lock. Ryu then rushed at Asuma but had to dodge a few slashes that were coated with wind chakra. Ryu then caught a wrist and, with a quick twist, snapped a wrist. The blade that was held in the now broken hand fell from Asuma's grip and was caught by Ryu. Ryu then stabbed Asuma in the shoulder, then pulled his head into a knee strike, causing him to fall back knocked out in the dirt. Ryu then dashed to the last Jounin who had stopped doing signs and watched in fear as this man tossed around some of the best fighters of the village like they were wet behind the ear genin. Ryu raised his fist, which was coated in a black flame, and was prepared to bring it down. Kurenai closed her eyes, expecting pain. But not feeling any pain, she opened her eyes to see a fist just barely touching her nose. The fire that was once present was gone. She looked up to the hooded face to see him looking down at her. That was when she heard the sound of him taking sharp inhale from his nose. He let out a low growl, and then he blew out a breath. Kurenai saw as the breath that looked like he was breathing in a cold environment wash over her. She felt her eyes begin to get heavy and she collapsed forward sleeping. He just took on all 4 of our senseis and didn't get a scratch on him, Kiba gave in a slight whisper. Everyone. Get ready for a fight. Sasuke yelled, drawing his chokin from its sheath. His eyes now a deep red with 3 tomos spinning. Everyone got in a taijutsu stance and was ready to charge. Everyone, stop. That's an order. Shouted Minato as he set his daughter down so she was sitting on the ground. He now stood in front of his group and now was face to the hood with Ryu. I apologize for my subordinate. He acted on his own. I would like to he would have continued if he wasn't stopped from a short animalistic growl coming from Ryu. I am done here, leave, or your village will be looking for a new Hokage. Ryu was done with these people. He wanted these people to leave so he could get back to his life. That was when he did a headcount, one person was missing. I see what you did. Sending your spymaster to go find a weakness, huh? So much for the honor of Konoha. Ryu was pissed at himself for being tricked for such a simple ploy. That was when Minato noticed that Jiraiya was gone. There was one place he could go, and that was where Ryu lived. Panic set in his eyes, this wasn't how he wanted this day to go. He watched as Ryu turned and was about to leave. Minato went to reach out for Ryu, that was all he could get out before the man disappeared. Cottage. Jiraiya was a curious man by nature, and it came in handy with his job being a spymaster for his village. He had to admit the Psy kid was right, what was right, something did not add up. He stood in front of the little wooden gate and fence that blocked the walking path to the house. It was a decent-sized cottage, it was at least 2 stories from what the windows showed. Jiraiya could not see into the windows from this far, but he could tell that there were at least a couple rooms up top. He went to reach for the gate to push it open when he quickly pulled his hand back in pain. That was he looked down and saw burn marks all over his hand, a barrier. This guy has thought that far ahead. A decent one at that, nearly burnt all the skin off my hand. Jiraiya quickly started trying to dissect the seal formula that appeared under the property, then disappeared just as quickly and came up with a solution. Not that complicated, barrier, a quick counter seal, and it will be down. Jiraiya took out a seal tag and drew a seal on it and then went to throw it on the was at this moment when Jiraiya's battle senses went off and he quickly ducked under a kick aimed for his head. You sneaky toad bastard. I told you to piss off, Ryu stated as he put himself between the cottage and Jiraiya, determined to not let him get into his home. Attacking a person from behind, where is the honor? Jiraiya was trying to get a rise out of him and saw that his efforts were not working. Honor? Really? Coming from a guy who peeps on women, you have no reason to talk about honor. Ryu got into a low fighting stance and was ready to pounce on him if he so much as moved a little bit of dirt forward. Jiraiya looked at the boy with a raised eyebrow. You do know who I am, right? I am one of the Sannin. You are just some punk who got a cool name. He just stood there with his arms crossed, staring at the little punk. Ryu gave a small growl and rushed forward fast, actually faster than Jiraiya had expected. Jiraiya leaped back to get distance and saw Ryu keep coming for him. All that prevented him from showing a panicked face was years of battle. Ryu took the chance and swung a fire-encased fist. Jiraiya aimed for his head. Jiraiya kept dodging the assault of multiple attacks. Using his speed, Ryu got in close and released a fire-encased punch to the face. Jiraiya was getting tired of all the dodging and finally stood his ground, thinking he could take the blow. Jiraiya took the opportunity to send some chakra to his muscles to block. It worked, Jiraiya only felt the heat from the flame. Jiraiya smirked, he then did a quick single-handed hand sign and bloofed on. To Tapa. The blast of air caused Ryu to skid back a little. Ryu dug his feet into the ground and then shot a punch toward the ground. The punch ricocheted from the ground to under guard that Jiraiya was putting up. The punch caused him to groan as he felt a rib or two crack. That was then Ryu followed up with 2 more powerful blows to the face, stunning Jiraiya. Ryu smirked and then shot a powerful uppercut, shooting a jet of fire from his elbow to give it more power. This punch caused Jiraiya to be stunned, all he felt was a pain. Ryu then unleashed a volley of punches over his stunned opponent. That was when Ryu drew back his fist and charged it with his energy. It was a mixture of fire with lightning dancing around the flame that encased his fist. The power grew to the size of a beach ball, Reienrik no Jekatetsu. That was when Jiraiya found some form of sense, he quickly reached out and placed a chakra draining seal on Ryu's exposed arm. This caused the power of the Reienrik no Jekatetsudo to weaken, but it wasn't enough. It connected to Jiraiya's chest. Jiraiya felt his ribs crack and his lungs are pierced from the pieces. The blow caused Jiraiya to go into the woods where he broke through a tree and then stopped abruptly in another. Ryu smirked at the sight of the old toad. The bastard got what was coming to him. It was then Ryu found himself very weak and tired. Ryu went down on one knee to try and catch his breath. It was at this time when Minato and the rest of his party arrived on the scene in a yellow flash next to Jiraiya. Minato gasped as he looked at his sensei, who seemed to be nearly dead. That was when Tsunade started to heal her perverted teammate. She did a quick diagnostic jutsu. She saw that he suffered from minor burns, which were nothing to worry about, but his lungs were starting to fill with blood and she saw that his nervous system was damaged. What the hell did he do to you? She said low under her breath when she looked at the man. Jiraiya was panting heavily, looked up at the woman in a mixture of exhausted and a little bit of fear. It was at this time when the rest of the Konoha group took this opportunity to subdue their target. That was when Guy and Lee grabbed his arms and Sasuke placed his sword around the man's neck. After Minato was done surveying his sensei, he walked over to the downed man. Now, was it necessary to do that? Minato asked as he kneeled down, so he was now at eye level with Ryu, or he would be if the hood didn't cover his face. Ryu was trying to move, but he felt all his strength was still drained from him. He still couldn't figure out why, though. That was when he spit in Minato's face. Sasuke grabbed the back of the head and slammed it into the ground. Ryu tasted a bit of blood in his mouth and moved his head to the side in the dirt. He looked at his exposed right arm and saw a seal on his arm. He couldn't identify the seal, one of his wives knew seals like it was nothing, but he was clueless when it came to this. Ryu was smart enough to put two and two together. He started to concentrate his inner fire on the part with the ink trying to burn away the seal. Minato reached for the hood and pulled it off. As Minato pulled, Ryu made his move, the ink was glowing, trying to suppress the energy in Ryu's body. The seal dissolved and Ryu moved. He threw both Lee and Guy off him and into Minato. Then Ryu disappeared in a burst of speed before reappearing in front of the gate to his cottage. His face no longer being covered by the hood. His skin was lightly tan, his black hair was spiked with two bangs that framed his face, and his eyes were blue as the sky with a vertical black slit for the iris. Another odd part of his face were the scales that were around his eyes. He looked at the Konoha group with a look of contempt. He looked at them like they were nothing like the dirt he walked on. He scanned over the Konoha group one by one until three, in particular, Jiraiya, Minato, and Kakashi. He gave a glare and a growl that sounded like a beast giving a warning to hunters that corner it. "Hello Naruto. It is good to see you again, Musuko," Minato said as he eyed his son for the first time in years. He looked just like him except for the black hair he had. Minato looked at his son with pride and sadness. Pride for what kind of man he had become and sorrow for the path that led to them being here like this. "You do not get to call me that Yondaime team," his slitted eyes narrowed at Minato, his anger rising fast as these people invaded his home. His father, using the term loosely, had come here looking for his alter ego, so he was looking for something from him. Whatever Minato wanted, he was not getting. "Listen Naruto, can we talk?" Minato sighed out when he was met with a cold facade from his son. He took a step forward and was met with a fireball landing just in front of his foot. This caused him to quickly look to his son, whose ice-cold eyes pierced through him. "You take one more step and I will kill you." The coldness in his words sent a shiver down Minato's spine and a pang of sadness and guilt in his heart. He went to speak again when another voice interrupted him. "Hey brat, long time no see," said Jiraiya, who was still sore from the thrashing he took from him before in his fight. He was giving him a bloody smile as Tsunade stopped healing and looked on with wide eyes. "As for you Toad, the next time you come sniffing here will be your last." Naruto snapped at the Toad Sannin. "The damn pervert needs to keep his nose out of his business. Naruto, please be reasonable, there is no need to threaten us." This came from Kakashi, who was shocked and full of turmoil, but years of training kept him from showing it on his. This was one of the students he failed, and here he was looking at him like he always preached or trashed. Kakashi, still the loyal dog of the Yondaime I see. Already looking for praise, Naruto looked at Kakashi with distaste. The man was his former sensei, a man he thought he could confide in. "Get out of my sight trash," Naruto told the man. He wanted these people gone from his home. These people came and interrupted his life, and he wanted to get back to it. Kakashi, this time did show emotion, he looked away in regret and sadness. He knew what Naruto meant, and he just couldn't bring himself to even look at Naruto in the eye because he knew he had broken his former student's trust. All the other of the Konoha group looked on wide-eyed as they looked at their former friend, brother godson, and ally. There was a small sniffle that caught the attention of the group. They all parted ways as Narumi came into view with tears in her eyes and a hand over her mouth. She was holding in her sorrow as she started to walk toward her brother and then she went into a full sprint towards her brother. She was about to pass Minato when it was Minato who caught her around the waist to stop her from going towards her brother. "Tosan, let me go." She struggled to get out of her father's grasp. "If you get any closer, he will attack," Minato said, having some trouble keeping his daughter restrained. He was not using his full strength mind you, he didn't want to harm his daughter. Narumi looked up at her brother seeing a small ball of wind in his hand, a lightning bolt dancing around the ball of wind. She stared at her brother with a heartbroken expression on her face. "On plus Chan, please," she was reaching for him trying to just put a hand on her brother to see he was actually there. "What did I say, Minato? Any of them so much as take another step, I will kill them. Final warning." The small tornado in his hand grew to about the size of a basketball and was sparking more ferociously, almost daring for them to take another step. "I don't trust any of you. We are not friends or family." Naruto was done with these people, he had left these people now they came here looking for Ryu trying to get him to join their village. "Naruto stop. Let's just talk." Minato pleaded. "There is nothing to talk about. Take your greeting party, leave, and don't ever come back," Naruto replied back. He stared down the Konoha group, not letting come any closer to his home. He wanted them gone before the kids were up, and if they were already up, his wives could only keep them quiet for so long. We need your help, the people of Konohagakure no Sato need your help. Minato was begging at this point. The threat that was coming demanded that he get help from anyone and everyone. So, you only wanted Ryu's power to help your village? Naruto snorted at Minato's groveling. So, I guess if I wasn't Ryu, you would have let me be, huh? No, I knew you were Ryu when I first read about you in the bingo book. I knew you were my son, and I knew you wouldn't want to see me or any of us. Minato waved him over his group as he spoke. Please let me tell you my plea, and if you don't like what we say, then you tell us to leave, and we will. Minato was pulling out all the stops now, he was even willing to get on all fours and beg at his feet if Naruto kept declining his offers, he was ready to offer Naruto anything. I am going to tell you more than to leave Minato, Naruto retorted back. You have 30 seconds starting now. Naruto started the clock in his head. The Akatsuki are starting their attack. Iwa and Kumo are at the borders waiting for the perfect time to strike. Their combined attack will wipe us out. We need Jiraiya to join us so we can survive this ordeal. Please, from one man to another, help me protect my family and people. Minato started to beg. 20 seconds, Naruto replied back coldly. We do not have the manpower, I know you think we came here just looking for a powerful shinobi to join us, but your mother and I knew who you were, and we want you back. Your sister wants you back. Please. Come home, Minato pleaded. He gripped the spot above his heart as he spilled his feelings. He was trying to bring his family back together, even if all the pieces were not going to be there. 10 seconds, Naruto stated. Minato looked up at his son with a fear-stricken look in his eye, this was not going as planned. What else do you want me to say? Everything we offered before is still on the table, all of it we will bring you back into the family, you will a part of the village again. We can bury the issues of the past together. Please, we have changed. Minato had tears in his eyes at this point, letting out all the raw emotion that he had buried in him finally coming to the surface. Plus-chan, please come home, to us please. Narumi broke down at this point. Tears fell at a rapid pace, causing the dirt below to dampen slightly. Time's up, and the answer is still no. Now leave and don't ever come back. Naruto was finally finished with his former village, and he didn't have to worry about going back to them. He gave one final glare to Minato and Jiraiya, who was still being patched up by Tsunade, the look on their faces was pure shock. Naruto, stop, we need you to put an end to this conflict, Jiraiya groaned as he got. Tsunade forcibly put him back down to continue to heal him. Come on, Gaki, this isn't about you or any of us. This is about the world. Jiraiya was losing his patience now. First, the Gaki beat him with an inch of his life and was going for the kill shot. Second, he couldn't fathom why he didn't want to save people from his own home, he has a grudge, I get that, but to not want to save the world, what is wrong with him? Jiraiya was trying to understand Naruto's thoughts, and Naruto was giving so little emotion that he was unable to get a read on him. I find it funny that you people keep saying need you, Naruto started. If I was just a regular person living a normal life and didn't make a name for myself, would you have come for me? He gauged and waited for any of them to answer. They did not say anything, but Minato looked away along with his former sensei. Jiraiya at least stared down Naruto. When he saw the reaction of his student and his student thought so, Naruto stated. Naruto sucked in air through his teeth and continued, so much for being changed. Fuck off and don't come back. Naruto told them as he dismissed the Konoha group. Jiraiya was finally had enough, he was going to pull one final card he thought he could play, what about Nami no Kuni? What if the fighting comes to your home? I don't think you will be able to defend this place all by yourself. Jiraiya was trying to pull at Naruto's heartstrings to make him think that he needed Konoha to back up this village he called home, this will get the kid to see he needs us. Naruto took in Jiraiya's words, it is a big place for him to cover all by himself, and even with his wives who were great fighters in their own respects, 5 people guarding a village of this size was spreading them thin. However, Naruto was not going to be baited by these people, you know, I was told the same thing by Itachi when he and Kisame came here looking for Ryu, Naruto blurted out. This instantly got the attention of Sasuke, whose eyes were spinning at Naruto as he finally spoke up, where is he? Sasuke's hand was on his blade, ready to draw it if Naruto refused to tell him the information he wanted about his brother. Hell if I know, Naruto shrugged as he didn't even bother to look at Sasuke. They came, offered me a spot on the Akatsuki, told them to take their offer and shove it. They didn't like my answer, gave the same threat you did, and finally, we fought. Naruto this time looked at Sasuke as he felt the heated glare of the Uchiha. Sasuke slid his blade out ever so slightly, relax, I didn't kill him if that's what you are wondering. Bruised, yeah, dead, no. Kisame learned that day that a shark can't kill a dragon. Naruto looked at the face of all the people that stood in front of him. Many were shocked that someone as young as Naruto went toe-to-toe with Kisame the Kurigakure no Kajin and Itachi and was the one to come out on top. Sasuke was internally relieved as his mission in life was still able to be accomplished. Yet, now looking at Naruto, he felt a ping of jealousy that he was unable to so much as make his brother look at him last time, but Naruto fought him to a standstill. Alright, enough of the mushy crap, I told you my answer. Now fuck off and don't let the door hit you on the way out, Naruto told them as he stood his ground. He kept his posture and stood in front of the gate to his home. He waited with bated breath for one of them to make a move. Keeping a close eye on the one guy with the creepy smile on his face. Why? Narumi cried out as Naruto finally let her go and she was now sitting in the dirt. You know why? I am done with your village, keep your problems out of my home and I'll forget you existed. Fair trade. Good, Naruto finally opened a small segment of the barrier to go back inside, not even seeing out his unwanted guests. If he looked, he would see his father and sister looking like their spirit had been broken. Kakashi wasn't faring any better as he felt shame, another person he had failed not once, but twice. Tsunade looked as if she wanted to say something to the black-haired boy that, at one point, always had a smile on his face. Kurenai and Asuma looked sadly at their leader and his daughter. The Konoha 12 all had different expressions. Sasuke, Shino, and Neji held a look of no emotion. Tenten and Ino were by Narumi's side, trying to comfort her. Kiba, Akamaru, Choji, and Shikamaru gave the most extended look at the house before moving, watching a friend leave them behind. Lee wanted to go over to Narumi, but with girls around her, he didn't know how to approach her. Guy put his hand on his prized pupil's shoulder and shook his head, telling his student to let them be for now. All of them started the long walk down the road, all except Jiraiya. When Naruto closed the small breach, he walked to his porch, not even giving them a second thought. Jiraiya was furious he couldn't take being looked down on by some gaki that was not even half his age. He was just going to show Naruto that he may be old, but he still could teach the kid a thing or two. So Jiraiya took the seal formula he was working on to break the barrier before Naruto nearly killed him. So he took the tag with the formula on it and pressed it on the wooden face that was the conduit for the barrier and watched it shattered. With a smirk, Jiraiya watched as the barrier fell. It was then Jiraiya saw someone dash past him towards the house. Jiraiya's heart sank as he saw it was Sai. What the hell did you do, Jiraiya? It was Jiraiya's former teammate that yelled the question at him in a grave voice. Naruto made a mistake because as soon as his back was turned, he felt the barrier burst. Naruto quickly turned and saw the ghostly white kid rushing at him, correction he was heading for the door to the house. Naruto quickly intercepted him and grabbed him by the face with a metallic arm and claws digging into the kid's face. He followed up with slamming Sai's head into the ground, knocking the sense out of the boy. Naruto wasn't finished, yet he then started to drag him across the ground, leaving a trail behind them. He then jumped high in the air, did a spin to gain momentum, and then threw Sai. The boy was like a missile in the air as he made contact with Jiraiya, blasting both of them back into the not-so-far-away party. When Naruto landed, the killing intent flooded the area, his face was a contortion of rage and wrath. He looked at Jiraiya, and in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the old Gama-sanin, with his whole body now coated in metal. He slammed a fist into the older man's face. He heard a sickening crunch as his fist made contact with Jiraiya's face. He then grabbed the stunned Gama-sanin and began to pummel him. Hearing the commotion behind them, the Konoha group suddenly realized that they were missing 3 people. Minato quickly putting 2 and 2 together and flashed away. Minato flashed to the mark he left on Jiraiya. He arrived to Jiraiya, spitting up blood and his face heavily bruised. He looked over at Sai. His face was as bloody as or bloodier than Jiraiya. He was being looked at by Tsunade, who was trying her hardest to not just leave the 2 fools to their fates. Naruto looked at Minato and got into a fighting stance as steam rose out of his mouth. Minato, it's bad, Jiraiya will live, but Sai may be too far gone. Tsunade was trying to keep the weak pulse from stopping completely. Naruto, what the hell is going on? What did you do? Minato questioned his son. As Naruto was now in front of him as he used the metal claws, he still had to slash at Minato. Minato braced himself as Naruto went into a frenzy at him, slashing and kicking all over. Minato got a cut above his eye that bleeding right into his vision. Minato had enough as he pushed a powered-down version of the Rasengan into Naruto's chest. The powered-down jutsu still sent Naruto back a couple of feet as his metal feet dug into the dirt below him. The metal scales receded back into Naruto's skin, the wrathful look on his face didn't waver. Of course. You think it was me who started it, huh? Your senile teacher broke my barrier, and then pale boy over there went rushing at my home. My home. Naruto pointed at the critically injured ninja that was part of Minato's group, you know, he gave a sigh at the end, as his shoulders slumped in sadness. I thought for once you would be honest and leave me alone. Minato could see the hurt-filled look that was now spread on his son's face. Guess I was wrong though. Naruto brought his fists up to his waist, and he gave a mighty roar as he called upon the power in him. Black flames now danced around his body as the scales around his eyes seemed to branch out more and more around his face, mainly in the cheek and nose areas. You came here looking for help in a war. Well, guess what, Minato? You just started another war. Naruto yelled, charging at his father with the black fire now focused in his right hand. He jumped towards his father and giving a battle cry, we swung the black-fired fist downward as Minato flicked a kunai in the air. Anger clouded the young man's mind. On this day, a decision would be made. One that would change the balance of the world. The day would end in violence, but that will come later. However, this isn't just Naruto's story, it's about the people around him as well. It's a mixture of their decisions and his that lead to this moment. The decision that started it all was the one that happened the night of his birth. Chapter 2. Where it all started. 20 years earlier, screams of a woman in pain echoed through the cave. The reason she is in pain, she was giving birth to last of her children, then came the cursing, Minato, I swear I am going to cut off that thing you call off you. Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze screamed. She had already threatened him with living on the couch on the first birth, and on the second birth, she threatened with a celibate marriage, and now castration. Her husband, she married in secret, couldn't blame her. It's alright, Kushi-chan. Almost there, Kushina growled at him like a wild beast, showing that he was making her angrier. She had already given birth to 2 children, both boys, and now the final one was coming. Minato was over the moon when they found out they were pregnant, they couldn't be happier. It was when he contacted Tsunade to check on Kushina was about 2 months along. It was then Tsunade revealed that there were 3 heartbeats and 3 separate chakra networks were forming. Minato was happy as can be at that moment, but Kushina was feeling the pain of labor coming to her. Minato remembered the weird craving, the mood swing, and regular foot massages he had to deal with, but he would not change it for the world. Even with all the fond memories of the pregnancy entering his mind, he had to focus on the seal that was on his wife's stomach. The seal that contained Kyuubi no Imko. Kushina let out another scream of pain, whether it was from the seal being strained or the pregnancy. Minato did not know. Kushina-chan. You okay? Minato was focusing his chakra on the seal that kept the Kyuubi inside his wife. He was concerned since the seal started to weaken. Kushina cried out in pain again. Minato keep focusing on the seal. This is why men can't handle childbirth. It was the doctor in charge, Tsunade Senju. Tsunade came back to the village at the request of her younger cousin and to make sure that her children were safely born. Kushina loved that her cousin had finally come back to see her godchildren and to help birth them. Kushina knew how Tsunade felt about the village and what it meant for her to come back here. Tsunade wasn't alone when she came back, however. Tsunade had her student with her whose name was Shizune. Right now she was at the Senju family home. I swear men could never bear children, can't handle a little pain, Tsunade sneered at Minato. She was focusing on Kushina and the last baby. Now Kushina, give me one big push. Tsunade instructed Kushina. Tsunade started to see the crown of the head of the final baby. I am pushing. Kushina screamed out again as she pushed. She was exhausted, the first 2 were a struggle when she had energy, and now she had none. One last push. Tsunade yelled back. Kushina gave another push, and the room was then filled with the sound of an infant crying, it's a girl. Tsunade told the new parents. Tsunade went to clean off the youngest daughter. While the birthing was happening, the guards outside the cave were struck dead instantly. The man who did the deed wore a yellow spiral mask with his right red eye showing through a hole in the mask, the eye, the Sharingan. Minato wiped tears from his eyes and had a bright smile on his face as he heard the cries of his daughter, which in turn made his 2 other children begin to cry as well. He leaned his head down and kissed his exhausted wife on the top of her head. You did amazing, he whispered to her. She gave a tired smile, thank you, Minato-koi. She then looked over to the little crib in the corner and reached for her children. Give them to me, Minato-kun, I want to meet my children, she requested. Minato went over the crib and carefully picked up both of his older children. One child looked like a damn near replica of him. Blonde hair that was like the sun, skin tan like him and 6 whisker marks on his cheeks, 3 on each side. The only feature he seemed to get from his mother was her round face. The second child was an exact replica of his father, even having an angular face like him. The odd part was there were no whisker marks on his cheeks and he had jet black hair. It was strange, but Minato didn't know his parents, maybe it was a received gene. His daughter looked like her middle brother from what Minato saw of her. She had blonde hair and whisker marks just like him. Minato shook the thought from his mind as he handed the 2 children to their mother. Look at you both, Kushina cooed as she snuggled her 2 sons closer to her chest to get a better look at them. You look just like your father and a little like me. She saw both the children looking to suckle as they tried to latch to their mother's breast through her shirt. At least you got my appetite from me, Naruto, Menma. She already had names picked out for both boys when she was told what they were. Really? Going with ramen topping names, Hakushi-chan. Minato had to poke fun at his wife's choice of names. Kushina blushed, Naruto's name means maelstrom, and Menma. Kushina's blush nearly made her face match her hair. The tiredness of labor left her mind and body as they chatted. Okay, Menma is a ramen topping. She looked back and saw the sly grin her husband had on his face. She knew he was just teasing her. Kushina then looked to her other child that was currently being washed by Tsunade. How about you name your daughter? A father should be able to name at least one of his children, Kushina said gently as she smiled at her husband. So you get to name two, well I get to name one, huh? Always a competition with you, isn't it? Minato sweat dropped at his wife, who was giving him a V for victory with her fingers. Minato thought about a name for a second, then one hit him. How does the name Narumi sound? There was the sound of a sneeze coming from one of the boys that were in Kushina's arms. It was Naruto that sneezed, followed by one from Menma and then one from the daughter that was now coming towards them in Tsunade's arms wrapped in a pink blanket. Well, looks like I am outnumbered this time. The kids agree with their father. Narumi it is, Kushina sighed in defeat and exhaustion. Minato took his daughter from Tsunade, or he would have if someone didn't just appear between the two ninjas and snatching baby Narumi from Tsunade. The blur kicked away, Tsunade with enough force to send her flying away. The man disappeared in a black vortex. Minato panicked when this happened as well as Kushina as she saw her daughter disappear. In the corner of the room, a man appeared with Minato and Kushina's daughter in his arms. Hello Namikaze Minato. Now step away from the Jinchuriki or your daughter will die at the ripe old age of 5 minutes, the stranger said in a calm and chilling voice. The stranger inched a kunai close to their daughter's throat. How did he get through the barrier? And how the hell did he get by the Anbu? Minato's thoughts here running through his head, trying to find answers and solutions. That was when the knife-wielding man inched the blade closer to his daughter's face and the seal on his wife's stomach weakened, causing her to let out a scream in pain. Minato shot up his hand, showing peace. Hold on. Just hold on a second. Let's just stay calm here, Minato pleaded while trying to take control of the situation. I'm as calm as can be. I will say it again, step away from the Jinchuriki. It was then the mystery intruder threw the now wailing babe in the air. The man lifted his knife to the falling newborn, looking to impale her. His wife screamed out Minato's name to alert him, and in a flash, he was cradling his daughter. The latter was still screaming, as expected from the Kairoi Senkim, the stranger said in a mocking tone. Minato looked down at the man with a glare that would send chills down a regular person's spine. Too bad you are not fast to save the other two. The cloaked man threw two kunai with exploding tags at his two sons. Minato was about to rush towards his other two children when he heard a sizzling sound coming from the blanket his daughter was wrapped in. Minato, thinking, quickly teleported away to his shack where he makes all his special kunai. Uzumaki Namika's residence. The moment Minato appeared in the shed, he stripped his daughter of her blanket and threw it deep into the shed, and he burst through the door of the shack. Not even a second later, the shack exploded with debris blasting out everywhere, some of it embedded into Minato's leg. The loud explosion scared the infant in his arms, causing her to wail loudly. Sorry, did I scare you, little Rumi-chan? Minato smiled at his daughter as he quickly flashed to a nursery that was in his home. He laid his daughter there in the crib by herself and then places a small blanket over her. As he was doing this, he thought back to the mystery man. He wanted me and Kushina-chan separated. But I don't think he was expecting Tsunade to be there. Hopefully, I am not too late. It was then he flashed back to the cave where he was forced to leave his wife and children. Minato looked around quickly and saw debris with a foot sticking out. Minato sprinted over and started to remove the debris over the body. Please be okay. Please, Kami, be okay. Minato hoped it was his wife, but he was disappointed when his eyes saw blonde hair. That was when Tsunade moved slightly. A few moments ago, Minato had disappeared with his signature Hiruzen and took his daughter with him. It was then that the kunai were racing towards her two godchildren. She ran and snatched the boys from the small crib as it exploded. Tsunade then blurred into existence across the room with the two children in her arms, wailing as loud as they could. The stranger then dashed towards Kushina, his intentions unknown. Tsunade appeared between the stranger and Kushina, swinging her leg. The leg with the chakra-enhanced strength swung at the man's head, looking to take it off. It was then something weird happened. Her foot went right through him like he was not even there. The phasing man shot a punch at her but was aiming at the black-haired infant in her arm. Tsunade turned her back to take the shot. The blow knocked the wind out of her as she stood her ground. Tsunade tried again to hit the man, but her foot slipped through the man this time. Thought she was ready for the counter-attack, so she brought her leg up, so her knee blocked the strike, but the force was enough to push her back. Tsunade wouldn't relent as she kept herself between the masked man and Kushina. The two continued to fight, Tsunade trying to kick the mystery man and her blows going right through him. The mystery man kept trying to throw Tsunade off balance and get her away from the Jinchuriki. Tsunade, get the boys out of here. Kushina yelled at Tsunade. She wanted her boys out of here and away from the conflict. And leave you here? No way. Tsunade yelled back as she kept her focus on the man. If I can just hold out until Minato comes back. Tsunade then stepped back into a guard she could muster, with both her arms occupied by screaming children. I grow tired of this, the man walked calmly and this time phased right through her completely. Tsunade's eyes widened in shock and fear. Tsunade tried again to kill the man, but the same result as last time. All her attack hit was air. The man stared over Kushina, who gave him a glare as she was mysteriously sucked into a black vortex, disappearing from sight. "Now to deal with you," the cold tone made Tsunade. "What the hell did you do with Kushina?" Tsunade shouted at the man. The man was unimpressed by the legendary Kunoichi. Even if her arms were occupied by children, she was no threat to him. "Why would I reveal my plan?" The stranger went through several seals and then ended on the tiger seal. "When you are already dead." Kaiten. Nkakik no jutsu. The stranger blew a giant ball of fire at the Sannin. The fireball encompassed the whole room as a wall of fire. Tsunade's eyes widened as the fireball moved incredibly fast towards her and her godchildren. Tsunade, thinking of the two infants in her arms, turned to shield the infants with her back. She let out a scream as the fireball hit her back as it ate away at her flesh. The fireball went blazing in the hair with her in the middle of it. She smashed into some medical cabinets that had been placed down there due to the pregnancy. Now, onto the destruction of Konoha. The man warped into a void, going to where he had teleported Kushina to. At the same time, Minato finally appeared back in the cave. Minato quickly turned Tsunade on her back and was met with his two sons, who were silent. Minato panicked at lack of vocalization from his son and grabbed Menma. He shook the babe upside down to try and get the babe to cry. The babe quickly wept with the shaking that his father did to him. The crying caused Naruto to cry, and the crying caused Tsunade's eyes to flutter open. "Thank Kami, you and the boys are okay." He smiled at the small comfort that they were alive. "Tsunade. Where is Kushina?" Minato's smile disappeared from his face when he asked, the Hokage and husband taking over. The Hokage part worried for the village's Yinchkriki, and the husband part worried for his wife. "That man took her. He has some jutsu that made everything I threw at him go right through him," she informed her leader. Tsunade started to get up. "We got to find her. We have to find her." She reached a point until the pain in her back made her hiss in pain and shoot back down. "Take it easy. You got some nasty burns. Take the kids to my home and keep an eye on them," Minato suggested. It was a suggestion that he regretted a second later. "Take it easy." Tsunade was now in his face, pointing a finger in his face with Naruto still in her other arm. "I am not a babysitter. I am one the San and you little gaki. I have been in wars while you were still swimming in your father's balls." Her yelling caused the two children to cry louder. "I need someone to keep them safe." Minato didn't relent as he gave an edge to his voice. Then he looked at Tsunade seriously, and it caused her eyes to meet his. She saw the seriousness in his eyes. She kept her own edge to her eyes and allowed him to finish. "When you get to my home, there is a seal in the children's nursery that will summon a toad. Tell the toad to get Jiraiya sensei here ASAP." Tsunade nodded, seeing only one flaw in his plan. "How are you going to find Kushina?" she asked, worry in her voice. "I overlaid a Hiratian seal on the seal that holds the Kyuubi," Minato answered. "Alright, good luck and get our girl back." Minato nodded with a determined look on his face, handed Menma back to Tsunade, and disappeared in a yellow flash. Tsunade looked at the spot where Minato disappeared, then down at the two children, and then ran as fast as she could with the two children, looking to reunite the siblings. Side of the extraction, Kushina screamed as some of the chakra from the Kyuubi leaked out of her. She was between two pillars that kept her in place. The seal that kept the Kyuubi in place speared over her body, a sign that the seal was almost gone. The Kyuubi itself could taste freedom as it felt the seal that kept it in place weaken. It released more of its chakra to weaken its host. "Why? Why are you doing this?" Kushina screamed as she felt like her insides melting. She and the Kyuubi were never in contact with one another. All Kushina would do was siphon off a little bit of chakra so that she had a small amount of power from the beast within her. "Why does anyone want a weapon?" The masked man stared down at her through the one eye hole. The man was sitting on an adjacent stone pillar with his hood up, his knee tucked to his chest, and his arm resting on his knee. "I am going to rip the Kyuubi out of you and destroy Konoha." Kushina froze and stared wide-eyed as he revealed his plan. "Who the hell are you?" she said. The pain peaked again, and she coughed up blood. "Since you are about to die, I will tell you. I am Uchiha Madara," the man boldly spoke. The tone in which he spoke gave no indication that he was lying to Kushina. "Now that the seal is weakened enough, it is time to bring the destruction of Konoha." Kushina keeled over and screamed as the seal was finally near its end. Madara disappears into a void and then reappeared in front of Kushina, gripping her by the cheeks to force her head up at him. Kushina's seal. He looked directly into Kushina's eyes and was now in the seal face to face with the Kyuubi no Imko. The Kyuubi looked at the man and then saw his eye, the rage unleashed. "You pitiful little Uchiha. I will not be controlled by the likes of you." Kyuubi roared at the red-eyed man. The man looked at the beast and, using the power of his Sharingan, began to take control of the beast. The Kyuubi eyes were starting morph and match the man's Sharingan. The Kyuubi was almost taken over and gave one last warning. "I will get free one day. When that day comes I will devour you and that damned eye of yours." The Kyuubi's will wavered and then, in its eyes, a Sharingan took its place. The Kyuubi ripped itself out of the seal, which looked like chakra in the shape of a rock, and it was nailed to this chakra rock with chains. The Kyuubi ripped itself from the rock and the nails that held it in place. Side of the extraction, Kushina let out a high-pitched pain-filled scream as the seal finally broke, and through her body, the Kyuubi was released. The red chakra spilled out of her like a raging river upward and then formed into the Kyuubi. The beast let out a roar and leaked killing intent in all directions. Kushina flopped down on the rock she was on. She felt nothing but pain. Her body felt broken, and she felt like her insides were on fire. Oh. Still alive, are you? Madara was surprised by this event. I am impressed by that Uzumaki vitality, to have a Biju ripped from you and still be alive. Amazing, Madara looked up at the beast that was now his puppet. Kushina glared at the man, she wished she could move more than just her neck right now, so she could show him what an Uzumaki can really do. Madara pointed at the downed woman, I think you should be the one to kill your former host. After all, being stuck inside her for so long, I think you would want some revenge. The Kyuubi let out another roar, bringing down one of its hands to crush Kushina. Kushina looked at the giant claws that were going to kill her. Her mind went to her husband, her and then her children, giving a silent prayer. I'll miss you, Minato-koi. Stay strong for the kids. The claw came down near her with I am sorry, my little ones. I won't be able to see you all grow up, but I will watch over you. She closed her eyes and gave a sad smile as she awaited her fate. She then felt weightless and she was being held bridal style to a firm chest. Her shallow eyes looked up to see blonde hair and the face of her husband Minato-koi, she said softly as she felt a smile spread across her blood-leaking mouth. Hello, beautiful. I came to save you, he smiled at her with a big goofy grin on his face. The same grin he had all those years when he saved her from Kumo all those years ago. Kushina gave him a weak smile and threw her arms over Minato's neck and started to cry into his chest. Minato looked back in time to see the Kyuubi and the stranger disappears into another black vortex. Minato glared down at where the man once stood and he vanished in a yellow flash. Uzumaki Namika's residence. Minato appeared in the children's nursery, making Tsunade stand up in a battle-ready stance. Minato looked at Tsunade and gingerly put his wife in a bed that was next to the children's crib. When Tsunade saw how broken and blood-covered Kushina was, she rushed over and began to use the Shumsen Jutsu on Kushina. Tsunade's chakra-covered hands tried her best to repair the damage done to Kushina, a worried look on her face. How is she going to beat Tsunade? Is she going to make? Minato didn't like the look that Tsunade had as she examined Kushina. He was not a doctor or Iramin, and he could see the damage that has been done to his wife. The damage was extensive to Kushina's body. Her organs were damaged extensively and her body was going into shock. She was bleeding internally. Minato, what the hell happened to her? She questioned as she continued to examine Kushina. When she got to Kushina's abdomen, it was then she noticed something. She pushed chakra into her and noticed an oddity. Minato, why is the seal not coming up? Did you do something to keep it hidden? Tsunade looked over to Minato, waiting for an answer, while still healing Kushina. Minato turned his head away, not wanting to tell her what had happened. Look at me, Minato, and tell me what the hell happened to Kushina. Minato looked at her with a fierce determination in his eyes. Tsunade saw the Hokage before her. It wasn't the kid that would follow Jiraiya around, no, this the war hero, the leader that made a name for himself as the Kairoi Senkim. The masked man ripped the Kyuubi out of her, he said through gritted teeth. Tsunade went wide-eyed and looked down at Kushina in horror. Did you do as you were asked? He asked curtly to her. Minato, we have to get her to the hospital now. I can only do so much here. Tsunade needed surgical equipment to have the best chance to save Kushina. Did you do as you were told? I need an answer, Tsunade. Minato barked out at Tsunade, wanting an answer. Kushina coughed up some blood and some droplets landed on Tsunade's face. Tsunade had hemophobia and the droplets of blood on her face caused it to go full-blown. She froze. Tsunade, did you the message to Jiraiya? Tsunade sat petrified, not answering. Minato's patience finally ran out and he grabbed her roughly by the arm. Tsunade snapped out of her stupor and took offense. Get your hands off me. Tsunade ripped her arm out of Minato's hand. She got in his face, gripping his collar. Touch me again and I make sure you never use that hand again. Tsunade growled at him. Did you do your job? Minato asked, not flinching from the aggression that Tsunade displayed. Watch it, Minato. You don't get to come here and act almighty with me. I need to know if you got in contact with Jiraiya-sensei. Get away from me right now, Minato. Both of you just stop. Kushina cried out, breaking the argument between the two other people in the room. It was then the two could finally hear the sound of crying and whimpering coming from the crib in the room. Give me my children, Kushina said in a hushed and tired voice. I don't think that's Tsunade started but got cut off. Me. My. Children. I want to see my boys and finally meet my daughter, the redeemed woman said with finality in her voice. Minato bowed his head, feeling shame for what he caused his children. He carried both the boys in one arm and his daughter in his other to their mother. Tsunade stepped back to give the mother and her children some time together. The medic in her was screaming at her to get both husband and children out of the way. The woman in her was having her heart melted by the scene in front of her. Minato laid all the children on the side of his wife. Kushina positioned herself so she was lying on her side. Kushina got a good look of all her children. Her boys looked just like their father, especially Naruto, who had a more sculpted face, but she had no idea where the black hair came from. Menma had a round face and his father's blonde hair. Then there was her baby girl, she was a copy of her mother and had her blonde hair from her father. Tears streamed from her eyes as she reaches out, touching each of their cheeks, noticing only 2 had whisker-like marks. Look at you all. Such beautiful children. 2 handsome men and lovely little lady, she cooed weakly. The babies were all cuddling up to their mother, enjoying the warmth her body provided. She then focused on her daughter. Hello, little Rumi-chan. Look how pretty you are. Kushina gave a slight cough and looked at Minato. 2-chan is going to have beat the boys off with a stick when you get older, she teased. Minato nearly fell over and imagined a chibi version of his little princess being hounded by boys and a scary version of him defending his daughter. Kushina then spouted out, these 2 boys are going to be heartbreakers if they are anything like their father. Kushina gave a small smile to her 2 boys and little kisses on their foreheads. Ka-chan is going to have to vet all those girls who want to get their grubby hands on you both. She smiled at her children, tears slightly running down her eyes as she was awed by her children. Narumi gave a gum-filled smile as if understanding her mother, and the 2 boys co-ed and giggled. Tsunade had to laugh at what Kushina had done. She had taken all the tension and anger out of the room with her interaction with the children. Tsunade had, at one point, wished to experience a moment like this when she and her lover were still alive. It brought a small tear to her eye. I did what you wanted. I sent for the old toad. I told him to get here fast and there was a complication to the pregnancy. Tsunade's voice made Minato face her, but she did not face him. She couldn't pull away from the adorable scene of Kushina, who continued to baby talk her 3 children. Good, he replied, but he knew what he must do. He walked over to a closet that was in the room and pulled out a white overcoat with red flames on the bottom of the coat. The eye-catching part of the coat was the red kanji for 4th written on the back. I leave everyone in your care, he directed towards Tsunade, which she nodded. He kneeled down to look at his family, giving his wife a kiss on her lips, then leaning his forehead onto hers. I have to go now, he said in a quiet voice, as placed his hand on each of his children's heads. I know, Minato walked away, ready to flash away. Minato, thank you and good luck, she gave a tear-filled goodbye as not knowing if this would be the last time if she were going to see him again. Minato gave a small smile when and flashed away. Kushina brought her kids closer to her chest, protectively. Tsunade brought a blanket from the closet and placed it over the small family. Trying to provide some comfort, she began to rub the back of the woman who continued to baby talk the infants while giving light sobs. Hokage Mountain. Minato appeared to complete and utter chaos. The village below was rubble and a fire pit. Buildings were either on fire, destroyed, or a mixture of both. Bodies were littering the streets, shinobi and civilians alike. The cause of this was being attacked by shinobi, and at the helm was Minato's predecessor Hiruzen Sarutobi, the Sandaime Hokage. Minato saw Hiruzen's giant staff smack the beast's face in quick succession. The creature reacted by breathing fire in Hiruzen's direction. Minato's sharp eyes saw the man in the orange mask on the back of the Kyuubi. Minato saw the man point up to Minato. The Kyuubi pointed its head up towards Minato, then opened its mouth, and a collection of chakra began to form right before its mouth, forming a Bijgama. When it was finally done, the beast shot the giant orb at Minato on the mountain. Minato didn't waver as he stood on the mountain watching as the Bijgama came towards him. Think I will back down, huh? He asked the beast as he spoke out loud. He pulled out one of his famous tri-pronged kunai. It was a Hiraishin kunai. Holding it horizontally in his hands, this village will not fall so long as I am alive. The Bijgama came close to the mountain when it suddenly stopped mid-air. That was when the air became a seal array absorbing it. Hiraishin. Mrai. The Hokage cried out. An explosion went off far from the village, but still could be seen from the wall of the village. The Kyuubi gave a roar at Minato until an elongated staff smashed against its face, and then a few explosions went off in its face, showing a rally of ninja attacking the beast. Minato had a victorious smile on his face when he saw the fighting spirit in his soldiers and the push of the village to stop the beast. It was then Minato heard a familiar noise, and there standing right behind him was the man in the orange mask. You are beginning to become an annoyance, Yondaime. Minato went wide-eyed at how fast the man raced towards him. Minato swung his kunai towards the stranger's head, but the knife phased through the man's head along with his hand as well. The stranger then lifted his hand, allowing Minato's arm to phase through his fingers, and when it was within his palm, he grasped the Hokage. I got you now. Time to disappear, the man started to use his strange vortex to suck him in. Minato used his chakra to reach out for one of the seals that he had around Konoha. He quickly found one, and he flashed to it, leaving the masked man by himself again out of my grasp. I will reach my goal even if you are in the way, sensei. The man then disappeared into a vortex. Uzumaki Namika's residence. Minato appeared back at the shack that was once his workshop. He can become solid and intangible at will. Minato dusted himself off and took a second to read his surroundings, scanning where all his kunai scattered after the explosion in his workshop. The kunai were spread out thoroughly. Minato had pulled out a kunai from his coat when he sensed a spike in chakra around him. The vortex behind Minato produced the masked man. I might get only one shot at him. Minato got into a fighting stance and was ready for the masked man to attack. The masked man produced a pair of shackles from one of his sleeves. I will admit you live up the reputation Kairoi Senkim, the stranger said as he puts on the shackles. I am going to enjoy destroying this village, and nothing you or anyone else will stop me. He stretched the chains by widened his arms, getting a feel for how long they were. I will kill you, and after I let the Kyuubi finish destroying the village you love so much, I will let it have your wife and children as a reward, the stranger mocked the yondaime. Minato's eyes narrowed as his rage peaked, his killing intent leaked in the wooded area. The masked man rushed at Minato quickly. Minato swiped his kunai at him, but again he phased through him. The masked man didn't stop with just phasing through the knife. He kept going through until he was through Minato, and the chains were coming fast. Minato reacted by jumping to a marked kunai that was embedded into a nearby tree. Minato looked down at the man with a calculative eye. Minato rushed at the man with a basketball-sized ball of chakra in his hand Rasengan. The ball of chakra went through the man as well. The chains nearly wrapped around Minato again, but he jumped to different kunai across the field they were in. Minato continued to try to land any blows with his kunai and jutsu, but all the attacks were ineffective. Minato flashed to a few more kunai, picking them up along the way. Minato then threw the kunai directly at the stranger. The stranger stayed still, letting the object phase through him like a specter. Minato procs to do hand signs, then in his hand, sparked electricity arsing between his palms. He pulled out a Hiraition kunai and channeled another Hiraition. Mirai. Then he finished the lightning technique Kraton. Jibashi. The combination jutsu created a vortex of lightning splashing in every direction, arsing off trees and cutting up the ground. The masked man did something different this time. He phased through some of the arcs of electricity and then he danced around some of them and then, after a few seconds, went back to phasing. Minato's eyes widened at this observation and began to calculate a plan towards getting to this man. Minato narrowed his eyes and threw the Hiraition kunai in his hand at the masked man with lightning fast speed. The masked man let the flying knife phase through him. Then the man saw Minato rushing after the kunai with another Rasengan in his hand. The masked man was not idle either. He rushed forward, letting the kunai phase through him. He reached out to Minato, letting him get closer and closer. When he reached I-Win-He, victory was cut short when Minato flashed Hiraition. Nai no Dan. Minato drove a Rasengan into the man's back. The man let out a groan of pain, but retaliated by wrapping the shackle chains around Minato's extended arm. Minato tried to jump to another marker, but he started to feel himself being pulled into a vortex, along with the masked man let go. Minato swung his knife in a slashing motion to try and get away from the man. To Minato's surprise, the man didn't let the attack phase through him like he usually did, but the knife made contact and sliced deep diagonally from shoulder to opposite side stomach. No blood fell from the stranger's body. I have you now. Minato started to feel his body begin to be pulled into a vortex. He tried to jump to another kunai marker. However, to his shock, when Minato tired, he and the man jumped to the kunai marker and Minato was still be sucked into the vortex. Minato and the man began to travel to wherever the man decided to take them, but before they could arrive, Minato made one final last-ditch effort to get away. He threw the kunai he had in his hand out of the vortex as it was almost finishing to close. Minato channeled as much chakra as he could into the technique. The two jutsu's powers fought for control of the destination that they were being teleported to. As Minato put his chakra into the jutsu, yellow sparks appeared around him as he tried to jump to safety. Minato would start to disappear, but then reappear with his arms still bound in the chain of the shackles. Minato pushed more and more chakra into the jutsu as he began to flicker more and more. He placed a seal on the man's chest with his trapped arm and shouted as his Hiraition no jutsu finally worked. Minato appeared alone near his old workshop, flopping in the dirt. Little to Minato's knowledge, in the far distance of the village, another flash shined into the night and then a loud thud echoed into the night sky and terrified local wildlife scattering from the area. Minato coughed from the sudden rush of air in his lungs. Minato slowly pushed himself up off the ground. Still wrapped around his offhand was the chain for the shackles and his assailant's arm. Minato dropped the man's arm and was shocked to see the appendage start to melt away. Minato felt chakra surge next to him as the attacker appears from his vortex, gripping the stub where his arm used to be. I can't feel my connection to the Kyuubi anymore. You're doing, I presume. The stranger looked down at the seal that now coated his chest. As always, the seal master of Konoha lives up to his reputation, he said in indifference. The man's cool voice showed no signs of pain from his missing arm or that he was sliced or hit with a Rasengan. Your plan to destroy Konoha ends now, Minato stated while breathing heavily from exhaustion. You may have taken away my control of the beast, the red eye shined through the mask, making Minato's eyes go wide. But now it is an out-of-control beast on the loose, the masked man began to use his vortex to disappear. The beast will finish what I made it start, and there is nothing you can do to stop it, the man's calm voice was even. Off in the distance, there was an explosion followed by a scream, and Minato could faintly feel the ground beneath his feet shake. Who the hell are you? Why are you doing this? Minato demanded as he stabilized his breathing. He wished when he cut the connection from the Kyuubi on the man, he put a Hiraishin marker as well. I will tell you who I am. Namikaze Minato, Kairoi Senkim. The man started to get sucked into his vortex. I am the one who will bring an end to the era of shinobi. I am the one who will be the god of this world. Uchiha Madara as its ruler, and like a voice on the wind, he was gone. Minato finally let go of a breath he knew he was holding and fell forward. He caught himself sticking his hands in the dirt below him. His chakra was nearly gone from all the Hiraishin jumping he was doing, especially the last one. He pushed himself up from the soil and then felt the killing intent wash over the area. The fox was loose and it was up to him to stop it. Minato crunched up the dirt in his hands as he thought about his wife, his newborn children, the man who was a teacher, his last student, and the man who mentored him into being Hokage. They all need me, and I won't let them down. Minato found his inner resolve, looked towards the direction of the village, and like his moniker, he flashed away. Konoha. Minato flashed back to the Hokage tower. He saw the destruction the beast had caused to his village. Minato did notice that his forces managed to push the beast out of the village's walls, and not so far off, he could see the fox battling his shinobi. The damage had been done to the village. Buildings were rubble, the fire burned brightly, and from his viewpoint from the tower, he could see bodies of both shinobi and civilians alike, littered roads, debris, and roofs. The village looked like a war zone. Minato jumped out a window of the tower and made his way towards the fighting. The fox was breathing fire down upon his men. Minato rushed towards the fight, jumping from rooftop to rooftop. He launched towards the giant walls of the village, sticking to the sides and running up it at fast speeds, and launching himself up high in the air and over the walls. The sight of a giant red rabbit-eared fox with 9 tails that were flattening the forest around it. Minato looked down to see the Sandaime Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi was with his famous summon, in the form of a giant thick bow staff Hiruzen Sama. Minato called out as he landed next to his predecessor. Hiruzen was wearing a black jumpsuit, mesh segments over the lower portions of his limbs, and a green gauntlet that covered much of his right arm. He also wore an armored hood with a bandana-like forehead protector over this, tied with 2 long straps. Across the back is written with the kanji for fire. Minato-kun, about time you joined us. Where have you been? Hiruzen said as he spun around his staff, ready to continue the assault. Dealing with a problem that may come back to bite us, Minato said as he narrowed his eyes at the mighty beast that just crushed 2 shinobi, that threw explosive tags at the monster's face. Minato gasped as he saw the loss of 2 shinobi, and now the fire in his belly, roared for action. Hiruzen Sama, pull back the troops, get them back and tell them to stay out of this fight. Hiruzen looked toward Minato with a question gaze, what do you plan to do? Minato didn't look back at the former Hokage to level the playing field. Minato dashed forward, then ran up the tree. He got to the top of the tree, then launched himself up and performed a series of hand signs, Kuchiyas no Jutsu. Minato shot his hand forward the air, a seal array appeared. The result of the jutsu was a giant toad. The color of this toad is a dull, rusty red, but around his eyes and on his lips and chest are bright red markings. He wears a large blue happy vest that has the kanji for oil. This was the boss summon of the toad's Gamabunta. Gamabunta slammed down on top of the Kyuubi. Minato gaki, what's the big idea summoning in the air like? The Kyuubi was not happy with the giant toad landing on it and went to shot a Bijigama at the giant toad. Gamabunta was quick to react, leaping high in the air and then landing far enough out of reach of the mighty beast. Minato, what the hell happened? Why is this beast out of its cage? Minato was now Gamabunta's head standing high above all as he was ready to face the mighty beast that made this night a night to remember. The ninja below looked towards their leader as he stood his ground and was now about to battle with a mighty demon by himself. The scene caused many shinobi to cheer and rally, their morale high again. Minato looked out towards the beast. Gamabunta-sama, a man ripped it out of Kushina-chan. I need your help to put away again, Minato asked his friend. What do you need me to do, Minato? The toad pulled out his giant dosu blade in a reverse grip, not taking his eyes off the monster. Give me time, Minato flashed away, leaving the toad with the fox. Gamabunta leaped at the fox, knife raised, giving a battle cry. Uzumaki Namika's residence moments earlier, Kushina and her children were still in the bed Minato placed them in. Kushina was holding her boys in her arms as they cuddled and fed from her breasts. Her daughter was in the arms of Tsunade, who was cooing and making babbling noises. Kushina noticed her oldest dark-haired child had stopped with his feeding, so when you're done, huh? She looked at her middle child, who was still feeding. Can't say the same for your brother, she giggled. She looked over to the children's godmother, who was making babbles back at the newborn girl. Tsunade, hand me Narumi and take Naruto, please. I want to make sure my little Haim is fed. Kushina smiled as the two infants were exchanged, and immediately Narumi found her mother's nipple and latched on. Tsunade took a good look at the small infant in her arms now, and immediately she noticed that the black hair on top of his head. Well, it was faint, it was still visible, and the fact he did not share the whisker mark as her two siblings. The baby looked up at him with deep purple eyes. Tsunade smiled at the small boy and bopped his nose lightly, getting a giggle out of the boy. My, a quiet one, aren't you? All that has been going on and still hardly a yell out of you. I could just eat you up, and look at those beautiful eyes. She wiggled a finger at the infant, and his eyes followed intently at the waving object. Naruto tried to grasp at the finger, but Tsunade teased the boy, moving her finger away from him as he was about to grasp it. This did not deter the infant from trying to grasp the object of his interest. Kushina smiled at her friend. Looks like you have some baby fever with that twinkle in your eye. Tsunade nearly dropped the baby in her shock, in which made Kushina practically leap to catch her oldest child. They both quickly steadied themselves and continued on. Tsunade, who was still teasing the small black-haired babe, very funny Kushina-chan. Tsunade replied with a tick mark over her head. It is a little too late for anyway. I'm old, and none of the men in this village have the balls to approach me, let alone ask me out. Kushina had a mischievous smile spread across her face. I know a certain white-haired Sannin that would take you up on that offer. Kushina's grin grew wider as Tsunade became angrier. Tsunade finally relented as she let the infant grip her finger and let him pull and put it in his mouth. In that pervert's wildest and wettest dreams, Tsunade retorted back at the younger woman. Tsunade had known of Jiraiya's love for her, the problem was there was too much awkwardness for her. She first chased after her Rouge X teammate, and then there was her first love Dan, whom she fell in love after meeting just one night. After Dan had died, Tsunade went into a deep spiraling depression, where the only comfort was found at a casino and the bottom of a bottle. She rejected his help every time he would come to comfort her. The idea of now going to Jiraiya just felt like using him as a rebound or a fallback guy, and that was not what she wanted out of their relationship. He deserved better than that. Kushina was laughing now, her pain from earlier has dulled thanks to Tsunade's healing jutsu. Speaking of the old pervert, any word back from him? She asked in a somber tone. She could feel as the house shook every now and then, but it became less frequent over time. She and Tsunade sat in silence except for the occasional noise of her children. That was then Minato appeared in the nursery with his famous jutsu. The sound of the jutsu startled the two younger children. Kushina looked up, hoping to hear what she wanted to hear, but he remained silent, so she asked, Minato-kun. Is it over? She asked. She looked at his face, and from knowing him for years knew the look, his brow was forwards, and his eyes were closed. He was thinking, Minato, what is going on? She asked and was again answered with nothing but silence. Minato, is the Kyuubi gone? Silence. Minato, answer me. Kushina's outburst caused her children to cry from the yell. The sound of his wife yelling and his children crying brought him out of his thoughts. He had come up with a plan, and his wife was not going to like it. No, the Kyuubi is still on a rampage, he started. He looks towards Tsunade. Any word back from sensei? He asked. Tsunade shook her head, and he let out a sigh. I have a plan. I am going to seal the Kyuubi again. Minato looked towards Kushina. Kushina then looked him in the eyes and gave a sad smile. I guess that should be the ending to this night. She brought her children to her chest, hugging them close. I am going to miss all you, but I will always be with you. She spoke to her oldest. You take care of them, Naruto-kun, be a good Otanto to your siblings. With some soft sobs she recollected herself. She then looked at her husband. I'm ready. Let's go. It was then she noticed where her husband was looking. Her maternal instincts kicked in. No, not them. Minato, don't you dare. She brought the children closer to her chest as tight as she could without hurting them. Tsunade was out of the loop on Kushina's thoughts as her mood did a 180. Minato's heart had ached at the frightened look Kushina gave him. He hated to see how frightened his emotions showed on his face. The hurt look on his face didn't ease Kushina. Minato wished his wife didn't have to see this, but he needed to seal the beast somewhere. Kushina is too weak from the extraction to seal. This is the only way. Minato took a deep breath and schooled his emotions. His face became blank as he walked up to bed that held Kushina and his two youngest. There has to be someone that can handle the beast. Our children can. Kushina tried to back away from her husband. Minato wasn't here as a husband, he was here as a Hokage. He reached for the children but was now blocked by another body in front of him. He gave a tired sigh. This night had been long, and he had a chance to end. Tsunade, there is no other way. Tsunade looked at the Minato unmoved. She would defend these children from whatever Kushina feared. Minato, you better tell me what you plan on doing right now. Her voice had venom in it. He made his advancement towards them. Minato sighed. He knew that it would be painful enough with what he was about to do to his children. I am going to seal the Kyuubi into the children, he bluntly said. What he was about to say would break his wife's heart. "I am going to use the Shikifjin to do it," he declared. Kushina jumped out of her bed, leaving her two youngest in the bed. She was ready to kill her husband before he could do it to himself. Kushina had tears running down her eyes as she began to pound on his chest while sobbing. "I can't ask anyone else to do what needs to be done." Minato's voice was softer now as he allowed his wife to vent her anger. Kushina grabbed him by the collar of his torn jacket and was in his face. "Listen to me, you baka. You will not do that to me. You will not leave your children or me when we just became a family." Her yelling caused the two youngest children to cry. Tsunade stood with Naruto in her arms as a barrier between the husband and wife duo and their children. Kushina relented, giving a nod to Tsunade as she stepped aside. Minato walked to his two youngest children and cradled them into his arms. Minato reached for his oldest, hoping to take his oldest as well. Tsunade refused to give up Naruto until Kushina tried to sway her cousin. Tsunade didn't hand over the boy, she just kept him tight in her arms. "I am going with you. I can't let all you people have all the fun," she smirked as she jostled Naruto, so it was more comfortable for her to hold him. Minato nodded at her and looked to his wife one last, but before he flashed away, he heard the voice of his wife. "Good luck and come back. Both of you." Minato flashed a small smile, and he and Tsunade were gone. Kushina gave a silent prayer to whatever deity was listening and hoped that everything would turn out alright. Battlefield. Minato appeared back to still see the giant boss Toad, still fighting the beast. "Minato-kun, you are back." Hiruzen landed next to his former student, his successor, and three infants. "Minato, are those your children, and why are they here?" Hiruzen's curiosity still piqued even with the danger that surrounded them. Before Minato could answer, there was another battle from Gamabunta as he charged the beast with the sword still in hand as he continued to swipe. He managed to nick the beast's ear, but the two pieces stitched themselves back together like nothing happened. The cuts on the Toad boss were still present as his happy was hanging off him in shreds and blood soaked from wounds all over his body. There was one particularly nasty cut that went vertical on his left eye, which he had closed. "I am going to seal the fox into my children and stops this rampage." Minato made 4 seal-less cage bunshin, 3 clones left, already knowing the role they would play tonight while one. "How the hell do you plan on doing that?" Hiruzen asked as the sounds of battle were heard around them. Minato gave his predecessor a guilt-ridden look. "I am going to use the Shikifjin and the Haki no Fukin Shiki to split into 2 and then seal yin and yang half into 2 of them." "You will die, you young fool," Hiruzen retorted back. "I know, but I will die knowing the village and my family are safe." Minato nodded to the clone that stayed behind, giving it a silent command to proceed with the plan he had formed. Minato then did another set of hand signs, Kuchius no Jutsu. A black and orange toad with dark markings around his eyes, mouth, and a circular mark just below his mouth appeared. This was Jiraiya, a scroll toad. His abdomen can extend to reveal a scroll which when concealed, gives him the appearance of wearing an obi. "Minato-sama, what do you need?" Jiraiya inquired. "I am giving you the key to a seal. I need to be kept guarded," Minato stated. "Of course, Minato-sama," bowed Jiraiya and then unrolled his scroll body. Minato placed his hand on the part of the scroll. The seal key in the shape of a swirl that can either strengthen or altogether remove the seal when needed. Minato nodded his head and, with a nod back, the scroll toad left in a puff of smoke. Suddenly the clone put its hands in the air in front of it and a seal began to form. In another part of the woods, the clone of Minato did the same and the second and the third. What started to develop was a barrier of purple coloration and it seemed to be growing from the clone. It was at this point that Hiruzen and Tsunade saw that the seal the clone was doing was part of a bigger seal, Shisekinjin. The clone shouted. The seal encircled around the Kyuubi and Gamabunta. The wounded summoned boss saw the seal forming and knew it his part had been played. Gamabunta gave a chuckle. "So that's the plan, huh Gaki?" Gamabunta put his signature pipe in his mouth. "See you around, Gaki. The rest is up to you." Gamabunta then exploded into smoke going back to his home of Mount Mamboku. The seal was a success and the Kyuubi was trapped. Even when the mighty beast was bashing against the sides, it held firmly. Minato took a deep breath and began to take his youngest children into the seal. "Time to end this nightmare," Minato said sadly as he cradled his youngest children in his arms. He was just about to cross into the seal when he felt a pressure on his neck and his world turned black. Hiruzen quickly recovered the falling children from the now passed out father. Hiruzen managed to swiftly catch both children and Minato. Gently laying his successor on the ground, he began to move towards the beast within the seal. Tsunade, still holding Naruto, was shocked at what she had witnessed. "Sensei. Why the hell did you do that?" She looked at him and saw not the shinobi no kami, but an old man with a tired smile on his face. "Tsunade, you and Jiraiya, I leave you two knowing that I accomplished something right as a teacher." Hiruzen shed a small tear. "I won't be able to see my son become the shinobi he wants to be. I won't be there to walk my daughter down the aisle or see my grandchildren." He made eye contact with her. "I see what a beautiful, strong, compassionate woman you have become. You were always the glue that held people together in their darkest times, even when you were swallowed by your own darkness. Hiruzen then turns away from her and begins to walk towards the fate he made for himself. Tell the young fool when he wakes, it was not his time. Tsunade was in tears as her sensei walked off into the sealed area with the giant fox. Tsunade had lost her family, her lover, and now she was going to add another loss she would have to bear. Tsunade was in tears as the bundle in her arms remained silent, oblivious to the world. Inside Shisekinjin, Hiruzen finished jumping across the trees as he landed in front of the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi was doing its damnedest to get out of the seal. Its clawed paws were trying to dig into the seal, but the seal did not waver as it took all the punishment that the Kyuubi was dishing out. It was then Hiruzen made his move. He quickly had a seal-less cage bunch and summoned an altar to place the two infants on it. Hiruzen then did a series of hand signs before he clapped his hand together, FanFiction. It was then a translucent gaunt specter with a demonic visage came forth. It is much larger than an average human, possessing long, shaggy, white hair, from which two red horns protrude, as well as purple-colored skin. It is draped in a large white kimono and carries a set of prayer beads. In its mouth was a tenten. Shinigami, I need to divide the soul of the beast into the two children before you. I assume my soul if good enough payment. The specter made no sign of understanding what was asked. It was then the giant fox felt the presence of the Shinigami. The fox may not have been able to see it, but looking down, he figured what the old man wanted to do. I will not be sealed, never again. The Kyuubi raised its claw to strike down the older man. The Kyuubi reached closer and closer till it felt its power begin to drain. It was then that it saw the Shinigami itself, connected to the life force of the old man. The Kyuubi began a useless battle of tug-of-war as its power was ripped from it and then divide into two. Damn you, ninja, I will escape from my prison. When I do, I will destroy this village and then go after that Ichiha. Now was the time to finish the sealing. Performing another set of hand signs, Hiruzen then placed his palms on the two children's stomach. Haki no Fukin Shiki. The Kyuubi was split into two halves, a yin half and a yang half. The yang half was put into the boy and the yin put into the girl. Two seals then appeared on their stomachs, symbolizing that the seal was finished. Shinigami, with its side of the deal done, claimed its prize. Hiruzen gave no resistance as the Shinigami took the tenten from its mouth and sliced the soul from Hiruzen. Hiruzen felt himself go cold as he fell forward in the grass below. His breathing was becoming shallow as each breath was painful and his eyelids began to feel heavy. In his cloudy vision, he could make out a head of white hair. Jiraiya arrived a moment ago and came upon his village in flames. Jiraiya was speechless as he rushed through the forest, seeing dead bodies of his fellow ninja littered across the forest floor and in the trees. He saw what appeared to be Kyuubi out of its seal. Jiraiya's first was Kushina and feared that she was dead. He raced as fast as he could, running towards where the giant purple seal was. As he approached, he noticed that the fox was beginning to shrink and then finally disappear. Jiraiya began to race towards the last spot he could guess where the Kyuubi last stood. As he got closer, he could hear children crying. As he followed his hearing, he came to a clearing. In the center of the field was his former sensei standing with a smile on his face. Jiraiya gained a smile himself. The smile didn't last long as he saw his teacher fall forward and hit the ground hard. Jiraiya rushed over to his sensei. Jiraiya slid next to his sensei. Jiraiya clapped the man's cheek, trying to keep the man awake. Hey sensei. Come on now. You're getting tired in your old age. Hiruzen's eyes opened slightly and focused on the blurry figure that was holding him. Jiraiya-kun, arriving in the end with a grand entrance, a smile graced his lips. Jiraiya gave a sad smile towards the downed man. You know me always. I always show up to save the day. I am the gallant Jiraiya after all. You want to know something, my boy? You really are my prized student. Hiruzen's voice began to lose its volume, his life nearly coming to an end. What do you mean sensei? I was the no-name brat of the group. Orochimaru was a prodigy and Tsunade was the princess of the village. Jiraiya gave a humorless chuckle. Yet you were the one I had to teach. Tsunade had her clan and Orochimaru breezed through everything I taught. You were the one I spent teaching and nurturing you. You were the one who came for extra training and beat himself into the ground to catch up to his teammates. Hiruzen smiled started to waver. Thank you, sensei. I always thought I was ordinary. I mean, I was a nobody with a prodigy and a clan heir. PFT I know no one believed I would do anything great. My boy, I always believed you. Hiruzen's eyes were nearly shut as he wheezed. My time is over. Jiraiya, listen to your sensei's last request. Help train the next generation to stop this. Stop all this violence and bring peace to the world. Help make an old man's dream come true. Hiruzen's eyes shut as the last breath left his body. I promise sensei. Jiraiya felt Hiruzen go limp in his arms. Tears began to fall on the face of Hiruzen. Jiraiya started to whimper and then it grew into an anguished cry that resonated into the night sky. The next day, the night ended with Jiraiya staggering out of the forest and through the gates of Konoha. Jiraiya was met by Tsunade and Minato at the gate. Even though the night was won, there were no parties, no cheers of joy. Tonight many wept and buried loved ones. Many things changed after this night. The funeral for Hiruzen Saratobi was large and every remaining person in the village attended. A teary-eyed Tsunade and a solemn Jiraiya were in front of the tombstone the longest. Narumi and Menma were presented as the Nugent Kriki of the Kyuubi no Imko. They were praised as saviors of the village and the prince and princess of Konoha. Uzumaki Namika's compound. Minato was in his office, still replaying the day over and over again, trying to figure out how Madara knew when and where Kushina was giving birth. He only told 3 other people where she was giving birth. Kakashi, Tsunade, and Jiraiya. Minato knew Kakashi wouldn't compromise his family, Tsunade was with them to help with the delivery, and Jiraiya was not even in the village. The frustration and bottled-up emotions finally broke through. He let out an anguished roar, smashing his fists against the desk and throwing all the contents of the desk crashing to the floor. He rested fist against the desk, taking deep breaths to calm himself. His ears picked up the sounds of his children crying. He continued to try and calm himself, it was a short while when he heard the crying of his children stop. The door of the office swung open, relieving an angry Kushina. She was about to tear into Minato for scaring the children when she saw the state the room and her husband was in. Kushina quietly walked behind her husband. She reached around his waist and hugged him tightly. Kushina buried herself into her husband's back, trying to take away her husband's pain. Minato touched the back of her hand with his hand, "I'm sorry." Kushina nodded into his back, understanding what he was feeling for the first time in his life, helplessness. He twisted in her arms, so he was facing her, and he hugged her back and placed his chin on her head. He rubbed her back and made a silent vow, "I will protect you. All of you." 1 year later. Uzumaki Namika's compound. Kushina was with the children in the living room, holding the arms of Menma trying to get him to walk. The living room housed a white couch and a rug that was under a glass table that had a flower-filled vase. In the corner was a bookshelf that housed family photos and children's books. On blanket near the center of the room was Narumi, who was in the midst of babbling at a stuffed toad that was given to her by the children's godfather. In another part of the room, young Naruto with his dark hair and little blue Onisi was crawling on the floor near the couch. Kushina was the only one in the house as Minato was at Hokage Tower. She was so focused on her youngest son at the moment she did not notice Naruto inching close towards the couch in the room. "Come now Menma-chan, you can do it, walk for Kasan." The babe though was having none of it. Menma began to cry at the use of his leg and arm muscles from trying to stand and hold onto his mother's arms. "Now, don't cry, Menma-chan. Alright, let's set you down." She placed the small babe on the ground, but that was a mistake. As soon he sat on the ground, Menma wailed louder and reached for his mother to hold him. Kushina gave a sigh and then a grunt from picking up her youngest son. She smiled at the baby now in her arms, who buried himself into his mother's shoulder. "You are such a coddler." She then blew raspberries on his cheek, sending the infant into a fit of giggles. She then turned around, "I think it is time for lunch. How about we get Otanto and Imto, and we have some ramen?" Kushina stopped mid-sentence looking at her oldest child using the couch to stand. Kushina placed her youngest son next to her daughter and went over to her son, who looked up at her with big violet eyes. "Look at Naru-chan. Already standing by yourself. Firstborn first to stand, huh?" Naruto tilted his head sideways, not understanding what was being said to him. "You are just adorable, now come on let's go get something to eat." As she reached out to grab him, he started to shuffle away from towards the other end of the couch. Kushina was flabbergasted as the infant shuffled away from her. She went to grab and missed. When Naruto had nowhere else to go since he was unable to hold himself without support. Naruto was then scooped up by his mother, who rubbed her cheek to his "Thought you could get away, huh? Don't worry, Kachan's got you now." The infant giggled as she walked him over to the high chair and placed him in. He was later followed by his sister and then his brother. It was a month later we find the 3 back in the living room with Kushina on the couch with a book in her hand with Narumi sitting on her lap, Naruto sitting on her left side, and Menma seated on her right. As she read the story to the children, she heard a word enter her ear, "Kasan." Kushina froze as she looked at the spot where she heard it from. It was her oldest son, Naru-chan. "What did you say?" Naruto looked at her, giving a tilt to his head. Kushina waited for a second, but then went back to reading thinking her ears played a trick on her. She continued to read until the word entered her ears again. This time Naruto had a finger pointed at Kushina, which made her get teary-eyed and hug her oldest. "Your first words, and they are my name." She hugged the boy with all her strength. When Minato got home, all he heard was his oldest calling out for his mother and Kushina holding the babe with a victory sign in her hand. Minato would have stand listening to his wife comment on how the children are already calling her name before his. Later in the year, it was Narumi who called out her father and then Menma who called out his mother. Kushina would brag about this moment for years to come. 2 years later park. At a park where the 3-year-old Uzumaki Namika's triplets where their mother was supervising them from a park bench. The two youngest children were chasing around the oldest as he ran away from them. The park was relatively empty, leaving the triplets to do as they pleased. Kushina took a second to enjoy the time she had to herself as the children entertained themselves. Taking care of 3 hyperactive children was enough to put any parent through the ringer, but triplets were enough to make any parent's head spin. Kushina tilted her head back as a breeze rushed through the park. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her husband would be late again, she knew because it was the beginning of the year and the academy was starting up again. He was trying to push for a later graduation age back to 15 so that the students did run into battle and end up dead. Many people on the Shinobi Council called this a show of favoritism as the triplets were going to be starting the academy at 8 years old. He asked a simple question to them all, do you want to be the one to tell a parent or a sibling that their child or sibling died at the young age of 12? So now, implementing the new rule into the system, he had to start to track and see how the test students would fare. Kushina then looked up at the blue sky above with few clouds in them. She heard laughing and saw 2 of her children now on the swings. She looked around and scanned the playground for her oldest. Her heart nearly stopped as she could not find him. The maternal instincts kicked in as she ran to her younger children, Menma. Narumi. Where is your brother? Menma answered first, he is not here, stating the obvious. Kushina spat back, so where is he? Menma was startled by the way his mother talked to him, he said he'd be right back. Where did he go then? Kushina was not worried about the tone she was talking to her children or the fact she was scaring them. Narumi pointed out shakily towards the edge of the playground where many people were walking. He went that way, Ka-chan. She stared wide-eyed at her mother with tears threatening to spill out. Nico. An Anbu with a cat mask appeared next to Kushina. Without waiting for a response back from her one-time student, she barked an order, stay and watch them. I got to go find Naruto. Nico again didn't have time to respond as Kushina dashed through the crowded street. Kushina quickly scanned the road as she ran down it. Usually, her ninja training would help, but she had one small problem. She was panicking, and the thoughts that were running through her mind were not helping. What if he got hurt? What if someone just took? What if an enemy ninja took him? What if they want him for ransom? What if he is dead? Kushina's thoughts were getting darker and darker as her heart raced. She spotted a mop of black hair and sprinted towards it with tears in her eyes. She got down one knee, Naruto. Thank Kami. I found she was cut off when she saw it was not her son, but a random boy gave the woman a confused look. The boy's mother quickly came over and pulled the boy away from the Hokage's wife. I am sorry, Kushina whispered to the woman as she got up, quickly began to race around again until she came to a T-crossing in the road. Kushina promptly looked down, each one not knowing which path to follow. The panic and fear finally boiled over, causing Kushina to let out a scream, Naruto. Tears were streaming down her face as she started to hiccup from her crying. A crowd was beginning to form. She was about to choose a path when she felt a tug at her skirt. She looked down and were met with a pair of violet eyes filled with concern. Ka-chan. Why are you sad? Kushina immediately picked the boy up in her arms and held him close, sobbing into his shoulder. She sobbed for a few moments as the crowd dispersed, seeing the child and mother reunited. Kushina calmed herself as she then looked at the toddler in her arms. Naruto, what happened? Did someone take you? The toddler shook his head. Then why did you leave? Kushina asked quietly, the adrenaline leaving her body and she was breathing normally. Naruto pointed towards the road straight ahead of them, and there were the gates of the village. I saw those big doors. He then looked at his mother with hope in his eyes. Can we go see? Naruto smiled at her. Kushina obliged the toddler with a smile as she walked to the gate with him still in her arms. She walked up to the point where they could see the giant forest that was at the mouth of the village. Naruto was awestruck as he saw what was beyond the village. Kushina couldn't help but smile at the Naruto as he craned his neck to see all he could. Even though the moment was enjoyable with her oldest, Kushina needed to speak. Naruto, I need you to look at me. The boy stopped his sightseeing and looked at his mother. You cannot run away from me like that, Kushina gave a stern voice. Naruto bowed his head in shame. You have any idea how scared I was? You left without a word, and you left your brother and sister. I am sorry, Ka-chan, Naruto said without looking up at his mother. What if something happened to them while you were gone? Kushina stated to the young boy. Naruto didn't respond, not wanting to see the look on his mother's face. Kushina, seeing how sorry the boy was, decided to speak up. Don't ever do anything that will again, okay? The boy shook his head. Promise? She asked. She taught her children the value of a promise and how in Uzumaki was only as good as his word. Promise, he answered back, but being a 2-year-old, he pushed his luck. Can we see more, referring to the outside of the gate. Kushina playfully tapped his nose with a finger. Next time. Come on, let's get back to your brother and sister. I bet they are worried. As she placed him down and took his hand, they began to walk away. Naruto, however, looked over his shoulder one last time, watching as the forest got further and further away. At night, with the children asleep in their rooms, Kushina waited up for her husband to return as she had a story to tell him. She would explain what happened at the park and what transpired afterward. She would say to him that Naruto was a little adventurer looking to explore, and Minato could only laugh at how animated his wife would get. They talked till they eventually found themselves in bed. In the room down the hall, the oldest of the triplets looked out towards the moon. His eyes then landed on the walls that blocked his view of the forest. He wished to know what else was out there in that great big world. 2 years later, Naruto, at 5 years, was out of the village. In fact, he just passed the village gate. Naruto knew he promised his mother he wouldn't do this, but the opportunity had arisen, and he couldn't let that go. The twins were with their father and godfather, apparently talking about the upcoming training they would be doing. Naruto snuck out of the house and ran to gates that he would always stand in front of. Ever since the incident when he first discovered that there was more to the outside world, Naruto had been standing in his regular spot when he got bolder and took a step forward and then another and then another. He was at the threshold of where the gate would close. Naruto's blood was pumping and his heartbeat was fast. He was so close to what he wanted, to go exploring. Ever since Naruto could leave the house by himself, he was always exploring. First, it was the clan district, then the market district, and then the red light district. It took Naruto a whole year to thoroughly explore the village. He mapped out the neighborhoods, roadways, buildings, and even the alleys. Naruto was smart for his age, and he had a good sense of direction, and that year he mapped out the whole village into his head, so he could never get lost. Naruto peeked at the guard station and found the golden opportunity he was waiting for him. He saw the guards asleep and lightly snoring. One guard had brown hair and dark eyes. His hair is combed down and always covers his right eye. He wears his forehead protector like a bandana, along with the standard Konoha shinobi outfit, which goes all the way up to his chin. The other guard had long, spiky black hair and dark eyes. He has a strip of bandage running across the bridge of his nose and a marking on his chin. He is wearing the standard attire of a Konoha shinobi, complete with a forehead protector and a flak jacket. Naruto sidestepped, keeping his eyes on the guard post as he got further and further away until he was far enough away. Naruto turned his back on the guard station and ran. Naruto went right into the forest. Naruto, at first, was sprinting zigzagging around trees and laughing. After a while, he continued further and further into the forest. Naruto was starting to get tired as he went from a full-on sprint to a jog until he was walking. Naruto looked around the forest, taking in the sights and sounds. He could smell water in the air and the smell of the woods around him. He could hear the sounds of birds chirping and the occasional squirrel calls out. Naruto was beginning to lose track of time as he was enjoying this rare opportunity. As Naruto explored, he came across some areas that were of interest to him. He came across an area with a giant crater in it. The trees in the area were damaged, some were missing parts of their trunks, and some of the branches had a bald spot that looked like they were never going to heal. There was no grass in or around the crater. Naruto stood at the edge of the crater and peeked down into it. What could have done this? He asked himself out loud. He squatted down and he reached into the dirt and found it brittle and aired. Naruto catalogued in his head the scar in the ground as a landmark for him to use later when making his map. Naruto left the scarred land and traveled in another direction as he continued onward. He was still enticed by the massive forest that he began to notice something. The birds had stopped chirping and the area around him seemed to go still. Naruto started to walk slower as he tried to detect any sound around him. He came to another clearing and what was there shocked him. There was a giant reptilian beast that was the size of a building. It was as long as two of the face on Hokage Mountain. Its scales were copper in color. From the angle that Naruto could see, its wings were bat-like and as big as half its body. Its claws on the front and back were as long as a human arm. On top of its head and nose were horns. The horn on its nose was curved, giving it a scythe-like appearance, but it was thick like a rhino horn. There was a patch of Ashen fur that was under its chin showing its age. The horns its head were twisted, giving them a rigid look. There were patches on its back where scales were missing, especially on its back and face area. The scar ran down its right side eye and the eye itself was clouded, showing it was blind. Naruto backed slowly as his heart raced. Fear gripped him as back slowly, but with him not seeing where he was going, he stepped on an acorn that crunched under his feet. The sound of the acorn breaking apart alerted the beast, which quickly snapped its head towards the shaking 5-year-old. The beast's long muscular neck stretched to full height, looking down at the frightened child. The beast's mouth moved and it spoke. However, as it spoke, the words didn't match the movement of the lizard's lips. In a deep gravelly voice, it asked, "What are you doing out here alone, child?" Chapter 3. New friends. What are you doing out here alone, child? The giant serpent asked the boy across from him in the clearing. The dragon saw the young boy had midnight black hair and looked no older than 6. From the voice, Naruto could identify it being male. Naruto tried to say something, but fear made his mind shut down and caused his breathing to stop. The creature made to stand but quickly fell to the ground, causing the ground and trees to shake. The young boy with fear peaked, bolted from the area as fast as he could. The beast called out for the boy to stop but was too late. Naruto ran as fast as his little legs could carry him, worried that the monster he had just seen was going to follow him. He ran and ran till he needed to rest. Naruto gulped for air as he was bent over, one hand on his knee and the other on a tree for support. Naruto looked back and didn't see the monster chasing after him. I got away, and it's not coming after me, Naruto sighed to settle his nerves. That didn't last, however, as he heard the beast let out a roar. Naruto made to run again until something stopped him. Listening to roar, it didn't have a sound of anger. Instead, it sounded sad. Naruto stopped and turned from the direction he came from. Naruto felt pity for the monster he had seen. Naruto started to retrace his steps back the way he ran from. Arriving back towards the clearing, Naruto kept to the tree line to hide. What he witnessed was something the young boy would never forget. It was big, whatever it was. Its head could rival the size of the Hokage heads, which has a triangular head with horns, a pair of large round eyes with bright green sclera. Its neck was short as a small tree, and muscular. Its body was muscular, like its neck, along with the body. 4 muscular legs were attached to the body. The wings of the beast were large, bony like a reptile with scales on the top, and the undersides were like a bat's. The wings were enormous. They reminded Naruto of the tarps that come out during the festivals, except they were the size of a house roof. The monster had one of its wings trapped within the ground, and looking at the stem where the wing was connected to the back showed it was all twisted and most likely broken beyond repair. The beast was curled in on itself, blocking its view of the boy. Naruto took a brave step forward, then another and another. Naruto eventually made it to about half the distance to the beast. Gathering his courage, he spoke out in a tiny voice, "Hello." The wing quickly dropped and revealed the monster's face. Naruto unconsciously took a step back. The eyes of the beast were narrow slits, and its nostrils flared as smoke floated out of them. Its eyes scanned the area looking for any signs of hostility. When the monster saw the boy near it and no other sense, its appearance relaxed. The beast stalked back to the small child in a low voice, "Hello, little hatchling." Naruto scanned the thing in front of him. The slits of its eyes weren't slits anymore, and the nostrils were no longer flared high. "Why are you so angry?" Naruto took another step closer to the beast. The beast laid its head on the ground, showing he meant no harm. "Sorry to frighten you, little one. I did not think you would come back." The beast spoke in a low voice, trying not to frighten the young boy that was inching closer and closer. "I didn't plan on it, but then I heard you cry out. You sound really sad," the boy said innocently as he stepped closer again. If the monster wanted to eat him, it was the perfect opportunity to do so. He couldn't get very far. "I am angry and sad, little one, because I am trapped," the reptile replied. Of all the things that this thing could have said, Naruto was not expecting that. The boy was curious. It had giant wing, it could have flown away, but why not? Why not just leave? Naruto asked. "My wing is trapped in the ground. I cannot move without fear of losing it," the beast said in a solemn tone. It twisted its neck and looked back behind, the cause of his pain still embedded in the ground. Naruto hated seeing this creature, in fact, any animal being in pain. He made his way towards the creature's back and sees where the wing is buried. It didn't look that bad at first, but when he looked at the other free wing, he realized how big the wings were. The wing was very deep in the ground. Naruto looked at the body of the giant lizard, whose head was peeking over its shoulder, looking at the small boy. Naruto saw something in its eyes. It was a spark of something. It was hope. Naruto gave a determined nod and then squatted down where the wing was buried and began to dig with his bare hands. "Hatching, what are you doing?" the reptile asked, wondering why the boy was helping him. "What does it look like?" "I'm trying to dig you out," still digging into the dirt, not even looking up at the beast. He was focused on getting it out. However, he was making very little progress. Naruto was already starting to get winded and his fingers were hurting from trying to dig in the dirt. "What's your name?" he huffed out, not looking up as he continued digging. The beast looked at the small boy that was trying to help him. The beast saw the determination in the boy's body and heard the conviction in his words, caused a smile to spread across its maw. "My name is Kyuubi, and I am a dragon." Naruto went rigid. Kyuubi started to get nervous. He expected the boy to jump up and leave him again. It was then the boy turned around and had stars as his eyes. "A dragon? For real?" the boy's voice boomed through the clearing. The outburst caused the dragon's eyes to widen. The boy was not afraid but in awe. Kyuubi chuckled at the boy's wonder of his being. "You guys are supposed to be a myth. The stuff of legends." The boy was now touching the Kyuubi's back, feeling his scales. The scales were the armor of the dragon. The scales were smooth like metal when petting them down, but when petting them up, it was like sandpaper. It was then Naruto began to climb up Kyuubi's back in his excitement. Naruto was examining the spines that donned the ridge of Kyuubi's back. The spines were round, no really meant for combat, but more of a defense. Then he crawled on the beast's neck. The neck was very thick and short, it was mainly muscle to back up the powerful jaws. Naruto then stood on the neck and then reached for the horns that were on top of Kyuubi's head. The horns were sharp at the top and had the shape of a cone. If Kyuubi wanted, he could do some damage with these objects. Kyuubi allowed Naruto to examine him the way he did. Kyuubi could only smile at the boy's wonder as the boy climbed him. Even with all the tugging and poking, he allowed the child to continue. As he got the horns, he smiled at the expression on the boy's face. After giving the boy his fun, he tilted his head, causing the boy to fall onto the dirt. He received a small whine for his action. Naruto quickly got up and dusted off his pant. He gave a toothy smile to the dragon, and he received one back. He went back to where the wing was trapped, began digging again. There was peaceful silence between the two. It was Naruto that broke the silence. So how did you get stuck here? Kyuubi stared off into deep thought. He stayed quiet for some time. Naruto was about to ask again, thinking Kyuubi didn't hear his question. I have been asking myself that same question. He turned his neck to look at Naruto, who stopped. I was flying when I suddenly felt a weird sensation, and then there was a yellow flash. Next thing I know is I feel like I crashed into the ground and my wing was stuck in the ground. Naruto looked up at the dragon frowning. He felt pity for Kyuubi, for a mighty beast that ruled the sky to be stuck on, or in his case in, the ground. Kyuubi deserved to be free. It rejuvenated Naruto as he dug in the ground with renewed vigor. So you don't know how you got here, huh? Well, Kyuubi-san, you're lucky I came along. If you were stuck here for a couple more days, you could have died. I have been stuck here for more than a day, hatchling, Kyuubi stated. Naruto paused and looked up at Kyuubi. So what a week. When the dragon did not answer but seemed to deflate, Kyuubi, how long have you been stuck here? The mighty beast then turned towards Naruto. I have been stuck here for 5 years, Naruto was not expecting that. Kyuubi has been stuck here since he had been born. Naruto's enthusiasm nearly tripled as he dug into the ground. We got to get you out. The boy yelled. Kyuubi's eyes almost popped out of his head by the vigor the boy dug with. You could die. This caused a hearty chuckle to escape Kyuubi. I am not going to die, foolish boy. But, if you have been stuck here, what have you been eating and drinking? Naruto questioned, still not letting up in his digging. Arrange for a drink, we dragons can keep water inside us for months. For what I have been eating, well, bird must have mistaken me as a place to nest. There is also the sun that we can use to feed us. We dragons can use the heat of the sun as a temporary food source, said with great pride. He also had, on a rare occasion, gotten to eat an all too curious deer, but he didn't want to frighten the small child. Naruto had sighed in relief and continued his dig. So can shoot fire from your mouth, like in the stories. Still mystified by the legend that he was helping. Some can, yes, others can breathe other elements like ice, wind, and metal itself, Kyuubi replied. Stars and twinkles replaced Naruto's eyes, hearing the power these beasts held. But what can you shoot from your mouth? Naruto asked, stopping his digging to look up at Kyuubi. The giant reptile gave a toothy grin and held his head up and shot out a small plume of fire, then followed by ice, then lightning and a small tornado of metal. When he was done, he turned towards the young child and was amused by the expression on the boy's face. A big goofy smile, and he was jumping up and down in excitement. That was so cool. How you do that? The boy. That is a story for another time. Kyuubi looked and saw that the sun had started to fall behind the trees. I think it is time for us to part ways. For now, at least, the dragon pointed his nose to the setting sun, gaining the boy's attention. Alright, I cannot wait to tell my family about you. Naruto finished wiping himself off and was about to run home. Stop. Naruto froze where he stood. He turned his attention to the dragon. Tell no one of me. Why? Naruto asked out of curiosity. I do not want humans to know where I am, Kyuubi stated with venom in his voice. He may have not been afraid of humans, but he had no intention of them finding him. His people and humans have been known to kill each other for just existing. They are a greedy, bloodthirsty and untrustworthy race. You are hatchling, there is innocence still in you. But full-grown humans are dangerous. I will not trust them, Kyuubi stated with finality and rage. Okay, I guess, stated a little hurt by the comment about humans. He didn't hurt Kyuubi, and he never would. It was then Naruto realized how late it was getting. Oh, crap. Kasan is going to be furious, as he quickly stood and started to make a run in the direction of the village. He turned on his heel, so he was running backward, waving at the dragon. See you tomorrow, Kyuubi. The boy then turned and ran full sprint into the tree line. Konoha Gate. Naruto made it to the gate as the sun had finally set, quickly checking the checkpoint to see if anyone was in the guardhouse. To his luck, there was no one. He quickly ran through the streets of Konoha, getting odd looks from the civilians and ninja alike. Naruto made it to the clan district, where he ran past the Hyuga and Inuzuka compound gates. When he got to the gate, he placed his hand on the symbol of the Uzumaki and Namikaze. There was a glow, and the gate responded was a click from the lock, and the gate became ajar. The front entrance of the compound was, for lack of simple terms, beautiful. There was a small pond in the center of the yard. Inside the pond was a little island with a small oak tree growing on the grass. Sakura trees decorated the walkway that was marked by white stones. The lawn was a vibrant green. The house itself was a two-story minka, with a wooden porch with a canopy that held a set of chairs on the porch. The front door was a thick metal door that had a lion face with a metal knocker on it. Naruto tried the doorknob, hoping it would be open. His unbelievable luck benefited him again, the door opened with ease, and no noise signaled it was opened. In the small walkway of the entrance, held a small table with a mirror above it. The living room had not changed much since the years that had passed. The living room had a clear view of the stairs, so Naruto peeked and saw that no one was waiting for him. He started to climb the stairs slowly. As he made it about halfway up the stairs, his spine went rigid by the voice that called out for him Naruto. The voice was sickly sweet, and Naruto had half a mind to run out the front door and hope that he could get away. Naruto went to go step up the stairs when he felt something wrap around his ankle. He knew what came next, and it was him being dragged through the house. When he stopped, he was suspended in mid-air with a transparent chain. It was his mother's all too familiar conch saw that was coming out of her back. Even though he was upside down, he could tell he was in the dining room. He saw his family looking at him, each having a different expression on their faces. His mother, who hadn't changed much since the night of the ceiling, was giving him an overly sweet smile. Naruto knew that smile held no joy whatsoever. His father, who was slightly sweating from the aura his wife was giving off, had his eyes closed and gave a shaky laugh for his oldest son. His younger brother, who was the spitting image of his father, blonde hair and all, looked at Naruto, annoyed and leaning his elbow with his head in his palm. Then there was his sister, the baby of the family, was smiling at Naruto. However, unlike their mother, her smile was warm and filled with happiness to see her on Plus-chan. Naruto could do only one thing, laugh nervously and hope his mother didn't kill him. Hey Ka-san, what's up? The smile never faded from Kushina's face, but a tick mark did grow. That's all you have to say for yourself. More chains sprouted from his mother's back, causing Naruto to stop laughing and swallow instead. Kushi-chan, relax, he knows he messed, and he's sorry. Right Naruto? Minato laid the groundwork to save his son, he just hoped he took it. Yeah, Ka-san, I am really sorry for what he was sorry for, he didn't know. On, Ka-san, on Plus is late, so what? Can we eat now? Menma groaned out and took the fork in hand, ready to dig into the meal that was displayed on the table. Ah, so that is why he is in trouble. Being late for dinner was a big no-no for his mother, who enforced this rule with an iron fist. Kushina let out a sigh and let her son drop to the ground unceremoniously, then gave him a come here motion. His sister giggled as Naruto presented himself to his mother. She looked at his shirt and his hands. Another tick mark grew on her head, and her hair began to float and move around like swaying tails. Then she gripped Naruto by the scruff of his dirt-encrusted shirt. What happened, Naruto? Why are you so dirty? Anger filled her eyes. First, he was gone all day, he was late for dinner, and he comes back covered in dirt. Naruto's eyes widened like dinner plates. I was helping a friend, and I lost track of time. He said as he guarded his face. All of a sudden, he was dropped, looking up in fear. Then he was hugged and tossed around like a rag doll. Kushina was cuddling her face into his midnight hair. My oldest baby is making friends. I am so proud. The family sweat dropped together. The matriarch of the family had regular mood swings all the time. She kept hugging her oldest as she puts him down. Now go wash up, you're filthy. Naruto went to the kitchen to wash up. Hurry up. We're having ramen. His mother shouted out. Naruto sulked into the kitchen, muttering under his breath, I hate ramen. His siblings, however, were already eating to their heart's content. At night, dinner went on, as usual, the children and parents ate and talked about their day. It was close to midnight as the matriarch and patriarch got ready for bed. Kushina was in a red lacy nightgown, and Minato was wearing only his boxers. Kushina was brushing her hair and looking into a large vanity mirror. Behind her came Minato as he started to kiss her neck and make his way up to her ear. Kushina let out a giggle and a moan as she playfully swatted him away. Stop. So instead of kissing his wife, he began to massage her shoulders. Her response to that was a moan and lean into his touch. I can't help it if I find my wife so incredibly stunning, he said, and then pecked her cheek. Minato continued to massage, but then the playfulness left him. I think it is time for Menma and Narumi to begin training. Kushina instantly tensed up. She quickly wiped around and was now facing him with wide shock-filled eyes. They're only kids, Minato, she tried to reason. She knew that the children had a responsibility being Jinchuriki and children of the Hokage, but they were still just that, children. Minato looked at his wife with pity. He even felt sympathy for his two children. He wanted them to have more of a childhood. Still, their duty demanded they be ready. They need be ready, Kushi-hime. They already have two big targets on their backs. Kushina knew that going after the kids was a possibility, since they were Minato's children. The one she didn't account for was the secret organization that was going to hunt down Jinchuriki for their Biju. People are going to try and kill them. Kushina to either get to me or the Kyuubi. I want them to be strong enough to protect themselves. He grabs her shoulders gently to reassure her. Kushina wanted the children to have a childhood and she would be damned if their lives were going to be filled with training. When the kids are 10 you can train them, she said to her husband. Minato's plan backfired on him, but Kushi. 5 years, she said with finality. Fine you win, he kissed her on the nose like always. The question popped into her head, he mentioned only 2 of her children, what about Naruto? Iwa will go after him first, Kushina asked, thinking about her midnight-haired child. Iwa would kill the oldest heir of the clan to weaken them. Minato gave a small smile, I have something figured out for him. Minato then continued to massage his wife's shoulders. Kushina was relieved all the kids were going to be taken care of as her husband continued to adjust her sore muscles. Kushina was moaning, her brush placed on the vanity dresser. Minato moved the straps of the nightgown down off the shoulders of his wife. She turned and kissed him. She gently guided him to bed and then pushed him onto it. She let the nightgown drop to the ground and Minato quickly followed and stripped himself. The light was immediately turned off soon after. The next morning, Naruto was already making his way toward where he left Kyuubi yesterday. Today he came prepared. In his hands was a bag he took from home, inside was a plastic shovel that he found. He followed his internal compass and came upon the clearing. He shouted, Oi! Kyuubi. If you were to quickly scan over the clearing, you would see a boulder lying near the opposite tree line. Kyuubi was curled in a ball, with his one good wing draped over him to hide. He was back where he belonged in the realm of dragons, he was flying with his kin, something that he wished he could do once again. The chilly low atmospheric air filled his lungs and the warming beams of the sun warmed his scales. Younglings were flying, causing trouble wherever they went. Suddenly a voice called him and pain shot through his body. His right wing was then ripped to tatters and began to fall, the ground was coming closer and closer. Kyuubi quickly jumped and turned towards the sound of the voice and hissed. Fire came out the sides of his maw. Kyuubi immediately saw the young boy from yesterday. Naruto if he remembered right. Naruto was not smiling, in fact, he looked damn near close to wetting himself, tears seemed ready to spill from his eyes. Kyuubi calmed himself and tried to soothe the boy. Sorry hatchling, I didn't mean to scare you, Kyuubi attempted to ease the boy. Naruto walked forward slowly with a shovel in hand and then got close to the mighty beast. I came back to help, he showed the shovel to the dragon. Naruto got where the wing was embedded in the ground and using the shovel began to dig. They sat in silence for some time, the only sound coming from the grunting of Naruto digging. Kyuubi finally spoke after an hour of silence. I did not think you were coming back, Naruto continued digging, but looked at the dragon with a toothy smile and gave a chuckle. I told you I would come back, he dug with vigor and his progress so far was not much. As you did young one, Kyuubi sat in comfort as he allowed the boy to dig him out. The boy continued to dig for hours. The sun was at its peak before they knew it and Naruto was beginning to get hungry. I am going to go back to the village to eat something, Kyuubi responded with a nod and as Naruto began to walk away, he heard a growl. He quickly turned, thinking Kyuubi was going to eat him. The noise was Kyuubi's stomach, who looked away in shame and in pain. Hungry, huh? When was the last time you ate? 3 days, Kyuubi answered. What do you want? I can bring something back, Naruto asked innocently. Kyuubi chuckled at the boy's innocence, you cannot hope fill my hunger. You would need something big or many to satisfy me, the boy looked at the dragon, still waiting for a response. Kyuubi sighed, fine, I want fish. It has been a long time since I had that delicacy. Kyuubi was practically drooling, thinking of the salty delicacy. Naruto thought for a second before he snapped his fingers. I will be right back, he ran off in a different direction. A half hour later, Naruto came back, dragging a fish that was the size of a large dog by its tail. He pulled the fish so it was in front of Kyuubi. Here you go. He said, smiling and presenting the fish to the great beast. The beast was silent and Naruto looked at the dragon, its mouth was watering and he looked close to crying. Hey, you okay? Kyuubi looked at Naruto with a smile on his maw. Thank you, young one. Kyuubi ate the fish slowly, savoring it. Kyuubi laid still as Naruto went back to digging, so how come you can shoot all that stuff out of your mouth? Ever since he saw the fantastic ability, he was wondering why Kyuubi could do it and if he could teach it to him. Kyuubi chuckled at the question, you remembered that, did you? What I did was called breathing. Not shooting, Naruto gave him a confused look signaling for Kyuubi to continue. Breathing is when a dragon takes in the air in their lungs and using the magic in our bodies to change the air into a breath. Depending on what type of dragon you are, determines what type of breath you can use, Kyuubi explained, looking down at the boy. The boy seemed to be confused. He was looking down and staring intently at the ground. Naruto was contemplating what the mighty dragon said, so what kind of dragon are you? You breathed out all different kinds, Naruto corrected himself using Kyuubi's words. He stopped shoveling and was now giving his full attention. Kyuubi gave a grin. He couldn't wait for the boy's reaction. I am a king of dragons. The response he had gotten was exactly like he expected. The child's eyes widened and his mouth was hanging. "You are the king of dragons," Naruto shouted and quickly bowed before the dragon, his forehead now in the dirt. Kushina had read stories to Naruto and his siblings about kings, and most people bowed before a king. Kyuubi laughed again as the boy in front of him degraded himself by wallowing in the dirt. He didn't want to be worshipped, but he still got a kick out of the boy's reaction. Naruto looked up slightly afraid. The fear transformed into anger as he saw the dragon mocking him. "Oi. You overgrown lizard, what is so funny?" Naruto had the shovel above his head, threatening to whack the giant dragon. He did, but Naruto's attack was like a mouse trying to kill a lion. The pathetic attack caused the dragon to trash around in laughter at the child's poor attempt of an attack. Kyuubi continued to give a hearty laugh at the boy's attacks and threats before he groaned out in pain. The groan causing Naruto to sport a victory pose, but quickly stopped when he saw the dragon in distress. "Hey, what is wrong?" The fun was sucked out of the atmosphere. Naruto quickly dropped the shovel ready to help any way possible. "Sorry, hatchling. The wound is giving me more pain today than I thought." Kyuubi looked back at the wing joint and saw it ooze a mixture of blood and pus. Naruto saw the bloody appendage and, though unintentional, knew he was responsible for the pain. Seeing the bloody appendage spew blood and pus made Naruto realize that the damage was worse than he initially imagined. He got a quick idea, it might cause him some pain, but he needed to help his friend. "I will be back in a little bit." He ran off into the direction of the village. Quickly and quietly, Naruto was able to sneak back into the village. The guard again was asleep, his bandana-styled headband was over his eyes. Naruto had a destination in mind, and within minutes he was at it. Konoha's hospital was a place rarely visited, and for a good reason. Every time he went here, he always ended up staying overnight, and his bachan would make him stay in bed the whole time. He dashed by the nurse's station, one of the nurses calling out to him not to run in the hospital. He quickly got to the stairwell and got off on the third and continued to run down the hallway as he found the door he was looking for. The frosted glass on the door read medical director and he charged in. "Oi. Bachan." Immediately a stapler made contact with his face, causing his feet to kick out underneath him. Sitting behind the desk was Tsunade and she was less than pleased. Tsunade had taken over the hospital as its medical director and was doing medical wonders for both civilians and shinobi. The brat had the nerve to call her old lady, but then to charge into her office like he owned the place. "You damn gaki. Where do you get off coming in here like that?" Naruto quickly got back up and rubbed his face where the stapler made contact. "You crazy old bat. What was that for?" Naruto yelled back at his godmother. He usually got along with his godmother, for the most part. He was the closets to her out of his siblings. While Tsunade would never admit it to anyone, she had a soft spot for her eldest godchild. The reason for the soft spot was because of how close he resembled her deceased brother. The goofiness, playful nature of the boy wormed its way into her heart, and when she saw how he acted as a big brother to his siblings, always protecting, always sure they were safe and cared for them, made her smile. Tsunade and Naruto went back forth with throwing insults at one another until they both calmed down. Naruto took a breath and finally asked what he came for. "Tsunade Ob-chan, can you make me some medicine?" She expected many things to come out of Naruto's mouth, like "Can we get something to eat?" Or "Can you teach me how to be super strong like you?" But asking for medicine was not something he asked for, ever. Tsunade raised an eyebrow at that question. "Why do you want medicine?" Naruto just smiled. "I need it for a friend." Tsunade was now beyond confused. From what she was told by both Narumi and Kushina, Naruto was more of a loner who liked to map out Konoha in depth. If his father hadn't forbidden it, he would have done the solar system. Tsunade and Kushina joked. Tsunade decided to humor him, so asking playfully and giving him a smirk, she says, "Oh, and kind of medicine do you need?" I don't know." He rubbed his head in embarrassment and Tsunade smiled, thinking that the boy was trying to get her attention by pulling a prank. Naruto then quickly continued, "But I know the sim." Naruto tried to use one of the bigger words that Tsunade used all the time when she talked about a sick or injured patient. "Symptoms?" she asked and corrected with a raised eyebrow. "Yeah, that." Naruto answered back and nodding his head with great excitement. "Okay, then Gaki, what are the symptoms?" Tsunade said while rolling her eyes at the young boy. Well, it was adorable, it was starting to get annoying. "He has a big cut and blood and this yellow stuff are coming out of the cut and it smells really bad." Tsunade instantly sat at attention as the news Naruto gave her. The injury he was describing was a deep cut and the yellow stuff had to be pus, so the wound was infected. Tsunade immediately went into doctor mode as she quickly went blazing past Naruto, but not before grabbing him by the collar of his shirt. Tsunade ran down the hallway towards the medical dispensary of the hospital, with Naruto being dragged behind her. She quickly let herself in and began to make a first aid bag. She quickly found some peroxide and anti-inflammatory cream. Now she went for a roll of bandages and placed them in the pack. After she was done gathering supplies, she demanded something of Naruto, bringing him up to her. They were face to face with her by holding the scruff of the shirt. "Take me to the patient." Naruto looked at her like she grew 3 heads, but then quickly shook out of her grip. Remembering the conversation he had with Kyuubi and his distrust of humans, he wasn't going to bring Tsunade to him, so he came up with an idea, just give it to me, I'll take care of him. This isn't the time for games, Naruto, take me to him. Tsunade barked at him. He doesn't trust people, he won't let you help him. Naruto fired back. What the hell do you mean he won't let me help him? Tsunade's frustration was showing at this point. He doesn't trust people, Naruto said lowly. Are you kidding me? Tsunade spiked the bag in the ground. Now she was bearing down on the small boy in front of her, you had me panicking over an animal. She was ready to throttle the young boy and she damn well was going to tell his parents about this. It wasn't just a panic that she was sent into by his barging in her office and saying there was a sick patient that couldn't make it to the hospital. She glared at him before walking out of the medical dispensary, but not before slamming the door. Naruto was close to tears now, Tsunade had never been that harsh towards him. So he grabbed the bag and slowly made his way towards the gate. Clearing, Naruto came back and Clearing still hurt from his encounter with Tsunade. Kyuubi noticed the small boy come out of the tree line, looking down. Kyuubi became worried as the boy just climbed up onto his back and began to look at the wound. Naruto had seen Tsunade treat him and his siblings for cuts before, so it wouldn't be too difficult. Kyuubi just laid there and let the climb. Where did you go? Kyuubi asked. Naruto climbed his back like a zombie. Kyuubi couldn't see Naruto, but he could feel the sadness that was radiating off the boy. I went to get you medicine. My Bachan is a doctor. Kyuubi just sat and listened as the boy talked, she wanted to come to treat you herself. I told her, you do not like people, and she thought you were an animal and yelled at me for wasting her time. Kyuubi felt sorry for the trouble he caused the young boy. However, he had to think of his own survival, and the boy was helping, but he would be damned if he would allow humans to find him. He wanted to just get free and find his species. If what the boy said about his kind being only legends, he needs to figure out where they are so he can go home. Kyuubi felt a sting on his wing. He angled his head so that he could look at what the boy was doing. Naruto had just put down the bottle of peroxide. Naruto let it sit for a second before he put on the anti-inflammatory cream and then wrapped it with a bandage. Naruto slid down Kyuubi's back and walked to his head. Naruto reached out, gently stroked the side of Kyuubi's face. Kyuubi's big eye looked at Naruto with question and then relaxed as the boy stroked his head. Kyuubi felt some comfort from the small human who showed him kindness by getting himself in trouble, all to keep a promise to someone he had just met. Kyuubi made a personal promise today to return the kindness he had been given by this small human. You are a kind-hearted child, he said. Naruto gave a small smile, appreciating the words. There was no digging for the day as Naruto just curled up next to the great dragon enjoying the heat his friend was giving off, and soon a small rhythm of breathing was all the great dragon was able to hear. Hokage Tower, same time. What do you mean not until they're 10? Jiraiya yelled at his former students standing in his office. The guards were dismissed and the privacy seals were set into place. The screaming Jiraiya was doing what and could have taken as an attack on the Hokage. Minato was composed. While he wasn't happy with the compromise he made with his wife, he made it, and his anger was close to boiling over. The decision was made by both me and my wife, Jiraiya, said Minato with finality. Minato, those kids need to be trained, something is coming, and they need to be ready. Slamming his hands on the desk. Jiraiya was eye to eye with his former student, glaring at Minato. His body language showed his aggravation as he was rigid and bearing down on the younger man. The tension was thick in the room. Minato was lucky Kushina was not in the room, otherwise, the room would be a bloody battleground. Kushina would have passionately disagreed with Jiraiya, in which Jiraiya would have had a sword by his balls by now. The answer is final, Jiraiya. The children will wait till they are 10. Minato was finished with this conversation, he didn't want to hear about it again. The prophecy states. 3 will grow from a strong tree. 2 will have great burdens to carry. 1 will rip the burden from the other. Then 1 will leave thinking himself a savior. The last will find a friend. With power, none will comprehend. The friend will pass on power. Power of a warrior. The warrior will either be the world's mend or its end, Jiraiya said again for what seemed the 100th time. He was trying to implore Minato the importance of the prophecy the toads had given him. This was the prophecy to end all prophecies. If this prophecy is completed, no more wars, no more blood, no more losing family, no more burying loved ones, only peace. Minato's expression hardened. All Jiraiya talked about since the kids could walk was the prophecy, and he was tired of hearing it. Jiraiya, you have me and my wife's answer. If that's all you came to talk about. You know where the door is. Minato waved him off and picked up a document from his desk. Jiraiya raised his fists in the air, about to slam them on the desk. Before he could, he just sighed and lowered his hands in defeat. The anger vanished and in place of Jiraiya was a man that seemed to age by decades. He walked up to the windowsill and leaned on it, looking out onto the village. He looked tired, and Minato took notice and immediately put down the paper he was reading. Jiraiya and Minato may be at each other's throats from time to time, but they were still family. Jiraiya was the closest thing he had to a father, and when Jiraiya got like this, he immediately had his attention with his back facing him. Jiraiya says to him, "I am tired of it all, Minato." His voice was dry, and he sounded like he was close to breaking down. Minato's confusion and interest peaked. Tired of what, sensei? Minato was worried about the man's well-being and state of mind. If Jiraiya, who has been a rock for years, suddenly broke. Tired of all this fighting, the world is at each other's throat. I am tired of burying people, Minato, Jiraiya said. The sentiment was not missed on Minato, who agreed with man. I am tired of burying people I love. Minato now put a hand on his mentor's shoulder to provide comfort. There is no war now, Minato countered. You're right. No war for now, but how long until the next war? Jiraiya continued to stare out onto the village. The only reason for no war now is because of you and the Hiration. Jiraiya chuckled lightly and cynically said, that's a deterrent, not peace. Jiraiya looked at Minato. I know I sound like an old windbag, but there is a chance that true peace can be achieved, and we have to take as soon as possible, Jiraiya said, raising his hands up and then heavily clasping his student's shoulders. He remembered the promise he made to his old mentor before he sacrificed himself. Minato gave a light chuckle. I understand, sensei, and like I said, in 5 years you, me and Kushina will train the kids. Jiraiya sighed heavily, but in a more relaxed manner and shook his head. I ever tell you what Sarutobi sensei told me before he died? Jiraiya knew Minato didn't know, but he wanted to share it with him. Minato shook his head, and so Jiraiya told the events of the night. He told me I was his true student, and so master told student the story of years ago. 2 years later, Menma and Narumi watched as Naruto diverted from their path and was heading in a different direction from the park. Menma and Narumi would have followed, but their last experience was still fresh in their minds. They followed, but quickly lost him in the crowds and twists and turns he took. They both ended up lost and had to cry out for help, and luckily a purple-haired woman with a trench coat helped them back to the park. It was after that event that they never went looking for their brother again. Should we tell Kachan and Tu-chan? Narumi asked her brother. Menma had rolled the idea around in his head for a little bit. Menma wanted his brother to be with him, but if his sister were to rat him out. Well, he hated the idea of his older brother hating him. So with his hands behind his head and marching like a soldier, he said, nah. It's not like anything will happen. Narumi nodded at her brother's logic and continued on with him. As the two got to the park, their ears picked up the sound of their friends having fun. Most of their friends were there, Sasuke, Shikamaru, Ino, Choji, Kiba with his new puppy Akimaru and Shino. They were laughing and chazzing one another, trying to tag each other. The two ran towards the group ready to enjoy a day at the park with Naruto. Naruto was making tracks down the street. He was late. He usually was up at the crack of dawn, but after last night he was tired. The Uzumaki Namika's family went out last for the celebration of him and his siblings' birthday. It was a boring party with all the clans coming over and bringing gifts for him and his siblings. Naruto and his sibling had gotten many gifts. From his parents, his sister was given a new kimono. It was a dark red with a Uzumaki swirl predominantly on it. Menma was given a sealing kit from his parents. Naruto had been given a gift as well, a sketch pad and a set of pencils. At first, he was confused, but his parents said he could use it to make maps, and he became excited about the idea. Another gift he had relatively liked or wanted was a map of the elemental nations, given to him by Iro Sennin. The map was from after the Third Great Shinobi War, where all the territories and villages of today were settled. The map was huge, it occupied most of the wall above his desk. The map was greatly detailed, showing mountain ranges, lakes, rivers, and main roads. Naruto's musings came to a halt when he tumbled into something. Naruto's face came into contact with something that felt like a metal pole. Naruto landed on his butt, rubbing his forehead to try easing the pain. His eyes were tearing up when he looked at what he had run into. It was a girl. She had fair skin, green eyes, and pink hair. She wore her hair up, so it was styled into bangs that covered her forehead. In her hair was a red bow, her shirt was blue, and she wore a cream-colored skirt. She, like Naruto, was rubbing her head, trying to ease the pain. Naruto could figure out when they collided, their foreheads connected, and remembering the lesson of etiquette that his mother and Ob-chan lectured into him. Sorry about that, he held a hand out for her to grab up. Villagers and shinobi who witnessed the accident quickly stopped to look and then left on their merry way. She stopped rubbing her head and the tears away and looked up at the voice. She quickly saw a dark-haired boy holding his hand out for her. She instantly knew who he was. Everyone in the village knew of the Uzumaki Namika's triplets. Naruto made eye contact with her. He noticed that her eyes had signs of tears and felt awful for causing the girl pain. She didn't move to grasp his hand. Thinking she was still unsure about him, he remembers something his father had said about girls to him and his brother. He then gave her a great big smile. The girl's cheeks instantly became a shade of pink that matched her hair. She gingerly reached up to the boy's hand and grasped it. The boy effortlessly brought her to her feet in a single motion. He then reached out his hand. Whether it was fear or shyness, she didn't know, but she leaned away from his hand. She closed her eyes. Naruto reached his hand out and gently started to rub off the dirt that had gotten on her shirt and skirt. The girl slightly back away from him, but he couldn't blame her, he did tumble into her. She felt a boy pat her shirt and flick her skirt. When he stopped, she opened her eyes and saw him still smiling at her. Well, gotta run. See you around. He said as he ran off, giving her a two-finger salute and smile. Sakura watched as one of the princes of Konoha left her in the middle of the road. She waved at him stiffly and replied back in a soft voice that was not heard by anyone but her by clearing. After 2 years, sneaking out of the village was child's play for Naruto. For some reason, they kept the sleeping brown-haired Chunin on guard duty. Either way, Naruto made his way to the clearing he had been working in for these last couple of years, but not before stopping by the river for fish. There, sitting where he always was Kyuubi, the sun reflecting off his scales, making him look like a beacon. The wound on his wing joint seemed to be healing and not as infected as before. It was all thanks to Naruto regularly treating and bandaging it. The hole had the shovel in it and it was expanded. The hole was now the length of a swimming pool and was as deep as Naruto's thighs. The wing was also starting to show. While progress was slow, Naruto was able to dig out to a point where he began to uncover the webbing of the wing. Right now, Kyuubi was just finishing another fish that was slinking down his throat. Naruto himself had a couple roasting on a fire, courtesy of Kyuubi's fire breathing. The two were taking a break. Naruto had made significant progress for doing all the digging by himself and being 7. Naruto was using the new sketch pad and pencil to use as he began to draw the head of Kyuubi, which was resting on his front claws. That's awesome. You were chosen to be a dragon king because you breathe all those elements? Naruto asked. Throughout the years, Naruto had learned plenty about dragons and their culture. He learned dragons valued fighting, being the strongest, and wisdom, being ready for anything that may come. Most importantly, though, they valued family. Naruto liked their ideals. It was similar to the Uzumaki's view. He wished he could be big and strong like Kyuubi or his parents. Smart like his Obchan and wise like Hiruzen, but not as perverted. Naruto loved hearing all the stories that Kyuubi could tell. Many of them involved how in the mornings hatchling and their mothers take to the sky. The mothers would teach the hatchlings to fly and hunt. Elders would teach youngling everything about the world, from the stars above and their lessons and guidance to the reason why all life ends. Fathers would take their young to show them how to breathe. Kyuubi gave a hearty laugh. The boy had come over 2 years here asking about him and his people. Never to turn the child down from a story, he decided to tell him more of his youth. I was the oldest of all my siblings, but I came from the smallest egg. As I grew, I couldn't breathe anything, not even fire. Kyuubi closed his eyes in nostalgia, but quickly opened them when Naruto threw a rock at him to open his eyes. He had forgotten that he was modeling for the boy to draw. Kyuubi responded by slamming his tail down near the boy, causing Naruto to fall over. Now, where was I? Oh yes. So I couldn't breathe at all, and my father was disappointed. Disappointed that the oldest of his new litter of hatchlings were not able to mold magic at my age and breathe. Kyuubi ended with a sigh, then he started to focus on my eldest sister. She was able to breathe ice at my age. Kyuubi continued on as he looked sideways at the boy, who was now more focused on the story than his drawing. One night, I slipped from our nest and went out to one of the many cliffs that were part of our land. I went to the edge of the cliff, breathed in, and tried to shape the magic in my lungs, and gave the strongest roar I could possibly manage. Nothing came out. For hours I spent trying to shape the magic in my lungs. My throat became dry and raw, and I sat and cried on that edge. Kyuubi then smiled, his fangs showing through his lips. I then remembered the words my father told us when we started. Breathe. Just breathe. Reach out, feel the magic around you. Feel the grass. Feel the air in your lungs. Feel the fire within your soul. Let it build and finally let it out. I opened my eyes and roared. With it came a great beam of fire that boiled the ocean around my island. Kyuubi gave a proud smile from telling his story. It also grew because of the doe-eyed expression of Naruto. So, what was your father like when you showed him? Naruto begged him to continue. He was proud. As I grew older and stronger, I was able to breathe more breaths. He was proud, and soon I earned the title of king. The only way to get that is for it to be bestowed upon you by an old king who is dying. After that, I had many females, young and old, tried to get me to breathe. Kyuubi paused, remembering that the boy was still young and had no interest in telling the boy how the male and female anatomy work. Naruto looked at him to continue. Well, I will tell you that when you are older. Arrow dodged. Naruto groaned out. Naruto loved hearing these stories. It made him want to get up and fight right now. Whom he would fight, he didn't know, but it made him excited nonetheless. There was a question that he had been dying to ask. What's magic? That was a question Kyuubi didn't expect, but like a wise sage was willing to teach. Magic is everything. It surrounds us, it penetrates us, it's in all living things from the smallest bug to the tallest of mountains. Magic is linked with the origins of the dragons and all people. Without magic, the world would not exist. Kryuujin instructed. He looked down pleased, seeing Naruto absorb the information. To Naruto, the words that Kryuujin said were almost similar to what his Ka-san and Tu-san described chakra. Do you mean chakra? Kryuujin was confused by the word, for he never heard of the word what is chakra. Now both parties were staring at each other with confusion and thinking the other is stupid. My Tu-san said that chakra is in all living things. It sounds like what you said magic was, Naruto stated, making Kryuujin go wide-eyed. Kryuujin stared intently at the boy, his eyes becoming slits, trying to see if he was lying. He wasn't focusing his anger on the boy, no, he felt fear for the first time in a long time. Fear of the unknown. Naruto also wanted to ask another question, so did you guys ever have a summoner? Naruto had been dying to ask this question. He was hoping to maybe even ask if he could be added to their list of summoners. Kryuujin looked at boy sharply, what the hell do you mean summoner? No one controls a dragon, and no calls us like some loyal dog. Kryuujin words came out harsh and caused Naruto to back away from the giant lizard. Kryuujin quickly settled his anger as to not frighten the boy. Can you tell me where the Scale Islands are from here? Naruto shook his head negative. How about the boiling sea? Again, he got the same answer from the boy. Naruto then flipped through his drawing pad, he walked over to the Drake and held up a drawing of the elemental nations he made. He explained where each nation was, and when asked questions by Kryuujin, he answered them the best of his abilities. When it started to become apparent, none of the locations that Kryuujin were asking about were on the map, dread washed over him. The map Naruto presented to him was not like the maps his people have made. All these years stuck here, he thought words like Konoha, elemental nations were just the names humans gave the land his people had other names for. Looking at the map, it was not the same land at all, and according to the boy, this was the land of the known world. Kryuujin started to think and panic set in, then suddenly his eyes turned to slit, staring directly at drawing then towards the boy holding it. It wasn't intentional, but it was too late as he roared. Naruto noticed, causing him to fall back on his rear and crawled away out of the range of Kryuujin. Kryuujin thrashed about undoing all the healing he had done with his wing joint, causing it to gush blood. Naruto saw the damage that Kryuujin was unknowingly doing to himself. Kryuujin-san. Stop. You're hurting yourself. Naruto crept slightly towards him, shouting and trying to calm the raging beast. He tried to get close, but a thrashing tail hit Naruto dead, one flinging him across the clearing. Kryuujin's head snapped towards the sound of the cry of Naruto. Immediately the slits in the eyes were gone, and rage replaced with guilt. The boy for 2 years put time and energy into helping him. Who treated him with kindness, who was his friend, was more than likely hurt because of his outburst. Kryuujin immediately tried to move, but the pain of the reopened wound reminded him that his wing was still trapped in the ground. Naruto got up slowly. His body was aching something terrible. His chest hurt, causing him to look down, and he saw that his shirt was shredded. A small red gash was already forming on his chest and bleeding slightly. The thorn on Kryuujin's tail had nearly sliced the lucky boy in half. Naruto looked down at his chest and lightly touched it. It stung, making Naruto suck air through his teeth. Naruto looked at the dragon with his big blue eyes that threatened to spill tears. Kryuujin saw something he had never seen the child that he had befriended over the years. He saw fear for the first time since that child had first stumbled upon him in the clearing all these years ago. Then the look of betrayal as the boy slowly got up and retreated back into the tree line. Slowly Naruto wait. If the boy heard him, he didn't respond as he walked away from Kryuujin. Kryuujin tried to get up again, but the pain kept him grounded. Kryuujin put his head down in shame as his only source of companionship left him. Hokage compound. Menma and Narumi had just come back from the park and were being put to work by a pregnant Kushina who sat at the table coordinating the two children. Menma was scrubbing a pan while silently cursing, while Narumi was drying. Alright, when you two are done with that Menma, you can sweep the porch, and Narumi, can you please help me with making dinner? Menma instantly tensed, his mother could not see his face, but his sister did. It took all of Narumi's self-control and a hand to cover her mouth to not burst out laughing. Menma was sweating, and his teeth were clenched, grinding the upper and lower teeth of course dearest Ka-chan. Damn slave driver. Suddenly the hairs on Menma's neck stood at attention, and he felt the back of head heat up. He also noticed his sister took 2 full steps away from him, and then a sickly sweet voice caught his attention. What was that, dear? I hope that wasn't you using foul language. I know I didn't teach my boy to use that kind of language. Menma quickly ran out of the kitchen, grabbing the broom from the closet, and shot out to the back porch. Kushina looked at her daughter and gave a wink. Works every time, which her daughter replied back with a wink of her own. She would have to talk about Jiraiya about his choice of words around her children. Kushina began directing her daughter in cutting the vegetables when a mischievous smirk spread across her face. So, is there any boy I have to tell your 2 cents about yet? Narumi's cheeks immediately went bright red out and she let out a whine. Ka-chan. Kushina then put her hands up, showing she was teasing and done antagonizing her daughter. She then smiled again. You will tell me, right? "We girls gotta stick together in this house." She gave a bright smile and then looked down, rubbing her swollen belly. "When this one comes around we will be even with the boys." "The girl? How do you know?" Narumi asked. The idea of another girl in the house, an idea that thrilled her. "The mother knows these things," she said with a smile, and they both laughed. Their musings were cut short when the front door opened and then closed. Kushina got to the door and what she saw made her heart stop in her chest. "Oh Kami. Naruto." The commotion caused Narumi to run to the front door as well. "Ka-chan, what's the pro?" Narumi's words died in her throat as she gasped and she covered her mouth. "What the hell is going on?" "Oh shit." Menma, having heard his mother yell, came rushing in from the outside and then seeing his older brother with an empty look on his face, bloody and beaten, standing in front of his mother and sister not making eye contact. Kushina let Menma off the hook for the little slip that came out. She rushed to her knees. She quickly examined her oldest son, who acted like a puppet. He allowed her to examine his injuries. "Are you okay? How did this happen?" She fussed over her son. The cut wasn't life-threatening, but it was deep enough to make him bleed heavily. Kushina looked over to her younger son. "Menma, go activate the seal under the kitchen table, hurry." The house had multiple Hiraishin seals within it, mainly in the bedrooms, kitchen, and the living room. All the family had to do was place a hand on it and Minato would know he was needed. However, Menma didn't move as he kept his eyes glued to his older brother's bloody chest. "Menma. Go." Menma then scurried off to get his father. Kushina stripped the torn shirt from her son. She then turned to Narumi. "There is first aid kit in the bathroom upstairs, go get it." Narumi, like Menma, froze, but she was got a question out first. "Is on plus Chan going to be okay?" Kushina barked at her as well. "I don't know. Go get the kit." Narumi got teary-eyed as she never had to experience her mother yelling at her. She went running up the stairs as fast as she could. Kushina needed the kit to help her son. Because of her pregnancy she couldn't correctly channel chakra. When a kunoichi is pregnant, their chakra network was primarily focused on the developing baby inside her. The chakra network flowed chakra into the developing fetus, helping it form a chakra network of its own. The Shumsen jutsu was a no-go. If she tried, she could possibly lose the baby. There was a loud boom that came from the kitchen. "What's going? What's the problem?" Menma points towards the front door, not daring to speak. Heavy and fast stomping signaling his approach. "Kushina. Are you okay? Is it the baby?" His blood froze when he saw the state of the oldest. Immediately rage came over his face. "What happened?" The fury in his voice would have made oceans freeze over. Gone was the man the children knew as father. In its place was a shinobi no through the land as Kairoi Senkim. "I don't know. He came in like this, hasn't said a word," Kushina replied as she was waiting for her daughter to return with the first aid kit. That answer was not good enough for the man as he was now in front of Naruto as "I want to know who did this to my son." His fists were balled and his anger showed in his voice as he shouted. "Minato," his wife hissed as she noticed her daughter standing behind her husband. Minato turned and Narumi dropped the medical kit as her eyes widened and she fell backward pale as a ghost. Minato felt his heart drop by the look of fear in his daughter's face. Minato reached out Rumi-chan, but she backpedaled from him and ran to her brother, who hugged her tight, who was sporting his own scared expression. He sighed and looked away. He felt terrible that his children had to see that side of him. He picked up the kit that was dropped and handed it to his wife. "How bad is it?" He kneeled so he was eye level with his wife and son. "From what I can see, it isn't too bad. I don't think we need Tsunade or the hospital. I can take care of it." She quickly treated the wound and wrapped it up. The parents both noticed a couple of things. Usually, when applying a disinfectant to a 7-year-old with a cut this big, there would be some sort of reaction. Naruto, however, never made a sound except for a thank you that came out that was softer than a whisper. Kushina got up and corralled her other children that were watching from the doorway with tears in their eyes and concern on their faces. Kushina brought them away and was assaulted with questions of what happened to Ni-san-chan. "Is he okay? What is Tu-san-chan going to do?" "He will be okay, little ones." Kushina smiled as she got them to the kitchen to give them something to eat and try to take their minds off their brother. Naruto went to go upstairs but was stopped by the gentle grasp on his shoulder by his father. "What happened?" His voice was soft and he was squatted down to get eye level as to show his son he was genuinely concerned. "I met someone, he was my friend," Naruto replied, but still kept his head low, not making eye contact. "He needed help when I first met him. He did want to bother anybody, so he was trying to do everything himself." Naruto wiped his eyes with his arm and then looked at his father. "I helped him. He was happy." Naruto's eyes started to. "We would get into fights all the time, but we would forgive each other. He would tell me stories of his life." Minato was now feeling a mixture of happiness and dread. Happiness that his oldest made a friend and dread for he had a feeling of what happened. Well, he got upset and he got mad. Really mad. Naruto touched his chest where he was bandaged. Minato frowned lightly. Well, his son was vague. He could put the pieces together. He was saddened that a person his oldest son had befriended had gone and hurt him, whether intentional or not. Minato would get the child's name and talk to his parents. "It's okay, how about you go upstairs and lay down?" Naruto nodded and left for his bedroom. Minato watched as he disappeared from view. He then went to the kitchen and found his other children in tears along with his wife trying to calm them. As soon as he was in the kitchen, he was assaulted by questions from his children. However, they were immediately dismissed by his wife, who told them to go in the living room. They protested, but a smile from her calmed them, and they did as they were told. The smile quickly fell when she looked at her husband, and even the hair on the back of his neck stood up as he saw the cold fury on his wife's face. "Who do I have to kill?" Her hair lifting in the air and whipping around like a certain fox. Minato was lucky his wife kept her sword locked away in the vault in the basement of the house. Minato put his hands up in a dismissive manner. "Now Kushi-chan, there is no need for that." The fire in her eyes didn't diminish. "We will deal with it. After tomorrow." Kushina's hair was back to being tails again. "An ambassador from Kumo is coming for peace negotiations. Right now I need to worry about this." Minato was trying his best to negotiate with his wife into not going on a murderous rampage. He gripped her arms and rubbed her deltoids, trying to calm her. "I need you and the children to look presentable." Kushina let out a huff as she walked up to talk to her son. "Your son was just bleeding, and you can't find time for him." Her voice was ice as Minato went to retort, but she just walked past her husband and began to climb up the stairs. Even pregnant, she was still as vicious when it came to her children and their safety, willing to kill anyone and anything. Right now she was ready to throttle her husband. She got to the top of the stairs. "I will take care of this. You go worry about your meeting." The venom from her voice caused him to feel a pit in his stomach. Minato looked at the stairs where his mother and oldest son disappeared from. He wanted to march up to comfort both his wife and child. He took a step on the stairs, but he remembered his other responsibility. He was the Hokage at this moment, not a husband or father, and he needed to get ready for negotiating. He went to the kitchen to his other children to calm down and get answers. Upstairs, Kushina opened the door to her eldest son's room and saw he was sitting on his bed with his knees tucked into his chest as he looked out the window that was next to his bed. The sun was peeking from behind the clouds on this cloudy day. Kushina looked over her son's room as she walked across. If she could describe it in one word, it would be scholarly. The walls were filled with maps and pictures that Naruto had drawn since he was able to grasp a crayon. Naruto seemed to be interested in finding out more and more about the outside world. She remembers when she allowed her children to go out on their own to the park, he had the biggest smile of the three. Kushina reminisced about her oldest. He was the first to talk, stand, walk, run, and basically do everything for himself. She noticed that he was always exploring and was never shy about going someplace different. He almost looked forward to it. She remembered the one time he ran off when and she found him staring out the gates of the village. The boy made her hair turn slightly gray that day, but it was unintentional and she never held it against him. Kushina sat down at the foot of the bed next to her son. Naruto didn't move or give attention to Kushina as she sat down. Kushina's face donned a warm, motherly smile. She then reached out and touched her oldest dark black and rubbed it. It was spiker than her husband's or Menma's. Kushina and Minato had agreed it came from Minato's side of the family. While playing his with his hair and rubbing his scalp, Kushina's soft voice reached Naruto's ears. "Want to tell me what happened?" Naruto turned and looked at his mother. Red stains were around his eyes and cheeks, showing he had been crying. Naruto recalled the tale he told his father about a friend who had hurt him. Kushina just sat and listened to him while she fiddled with his hair. After the story was finished, he began to cry again. Kushina laid him down, so his head was her lap, and she began to hum a lullaby. When she noticed he had started to snore softly, she placed him on the pillow of his bed and began to walk out, though he back and feet protested, and the kick to her bladder didn't help either. Downstairs, Minato was sitting with his other two children, and Right was fighting the chill that was running down his spine. Narumi and Menma said that Naruto was never at the park with the other children. They didn't know where he went. "Are you mad, Tu-chan?" Narumi asked, breaking his train of thought. Yes, he was mad, but he didn't want his children to know. He quickly put a smile on his face and shook his head. "No, I am not mad, Haim." He stood up and walked to the stairs, about to march up to his oldest room and demand answers. When he came to stairs, he met Kushina coming down the stairs slowly as trying not to bounce as to not hurt the life inside her. Minato held out his hand to help support her. She gave him a small nod of appreciation as she came down. "Where is Naruto?" Minato asked in a neutral tone. Kushina looked at her husband with a raised eyebrow, curious over his tone, but answered him nonetheless. "Upstairs, he fell asleep." Minato went to go past her but was caught by his wife by the shoulder. Minato then turned and glared at her, making her lean back for a second, but then glare right back at him. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "I just found out my son has been leaving his siblings alone in the park while he goes off on his own. I want to know why and where," Minato said. Kushina didn't let go of him. "He is sleeping." The pregnant Kunoichi didn't relent. Her maternal instincts telling made her protect her child. I want to know where he goes. Minato snapped. Minato was frightened by the notion that his son was out and about by himself. Minato had no idea who his son was meeting, and if he wasn't with his siblings and other children, then where was he going? Who was he meeting? Who attacked his son? I want to know who did this. Minato, Kushina said as she tried to get him to lower his voice. Calm down and lower your voice, she said in a hushed tone. Minato was in the process of stomping up the stairs, but quickly turned to stare down at his wife. What? Kushina gave a subtle nod towards the kitchen doorway where Minato saw his two other children. They were close to shedding tears again. Minato looked at them and then back at his wife, who just shook her head in disappointment as she went over her daughter and youngest son. All the fury Minato had built up was gone. All that was left was remorse for the way he acted and the way he talked to his wife. Then an idea dawned on him to help brighten his children's mood. He walked up to his two younger children and kneeled down to their level. Who wants ramen from Ichiraku? He said, smiling to the two children whose faces quickly brightened. His wife's face may not have been scowling anymore, but she was far from happy. The children nodded and were excited by the idea. Minato promised them he would be back with the delicious treat in a flash. Kushina then rallied the two children to get the table set, while every now and then, checking on her oldest, who went from napping to drawing intently in his book. What he was drawing, she did not know. Dinner went by with Naruto and Minato being the quietest of the family. Later that night Namika's Uzumaki house. Minato peeked his head into his oldest son's room and saw the boy had passed out with the pad and pen in his bed and his lamp still on. Minato crept in and went to turn off the light. He then placed his hand on Naruto's head affectionately. Sorry, Naruto. He then turned and walked out. His next stop was Menma's bedroom, where he found the boy already tucked in. Minato smiled at how much alike he and his youngest. The significant difference was that Menma had picked up some bad habits from Jiraiya, but he was still a good kid. Then in Narumi's room, it took all his willpower to not laugh. She was sprawled out spread eagle, drool was running down her lip and cheek. Then there was the fact she was snoring loudly. He then came to his room. He had been dreading it since the argument. He crept in, and the lights were off. His years of training and being a shinobi was what helped him see the mound in the bed. He silently and carefully dressed down into a shirt and a pair of boxers, then slid into the bed with his wife. As he slid into their bed, he knew she was just pretending to be asleep. He softly whispered to her, I'm sorry. While he could not see her face, which now had a soft smile on it, he did hear her say back, I know. They slept that night peacefully. All their anger of today was gone and forgotten. Next day, front northern gate. In front of the northern gate, Minato, in his Hokage attire, was standing at the entrance. To his right was his wife, then followed by their children, Naruto first, Menma second, and Narumi last in line. On the left of him was his Hiashi Hyuga, clan head of the Hyuga, and Minato's lifelong friend stood glaring at the front gates. Minato stood as well, then with a neutral expression on his face. They looked over to his friend. I appreciate you housing them during the negotiations. The ashy still stone-faced nodded. It is our honor as a clan to house such honored guest, his voice showing little to no emotion. It was then down the road the welcoming party can see the ambassadors from Kumo walking up to the village. There were only 3 men, all tall, muscular, and olive skin like most from their native land. The ambassadors came to a stop in front of the gate to the village. One, in particular, came forward. He was like all the others except this man wore a pair of wire-rimmed glasses and cap that were similar to a scholar. He then bowed. The welcoming party did the same, all except Kushina, who glared and leaned towards her children greeting Hokage Dono. You honor us with letting us into your village. His voice was regal and he spoke with the utmost respect. Minato stood straight. We thank you for coming. He forced a smile and then presented Hiashi to the Kumo, who stepped forward next to Minato. This is the Hyuga clan head, Hyuga Hiashi. Hiashi bowed again. He will be housing you for your stay in the village. Hiashi spoke with the authority of a clan head and said, we are most honored to have you. The honor is mine, honorable Hyuga-sama. I am Kenichi and my associates are Renji and Aki. The man smiled and bowed again. His subordinates did the same. Kenichi then looked over Minato's shoulder and saw his children. Kenichi then went to get close to them, but was stopped when the pregnant Uzumaki Namika's matriarch stepped in front of them. Greetings young Uzumaki Namikas and matriarch. It is a pleasure to make your acquaintance. From behind their mother Naruto, Menma and Narumi were more apprehensive towards the strange man, especially when he gave them all a toothy smile. 13 years later, cottage. The unconscious form of Choji went skipping across the ground, then came to an eventual stop as he laid in the dirt. There were more unconscious bodies, including Kiba, Akamaru. Both were laying in the limbs of trees. Ino was at the bottom of the cliffs, holding onto the rocks below, so she didn't get taken by the waves. Shino was stuck in the ground half buried, and burn marks were all over his coat. Shino feared for his hive, leaving his only option to get into close combat. It was not a wise decision. Sai bore wounds on the stomach and face. While on the surface it was not life-threatening, it was the internal damage that was threatening. Already bruises were forming, and the colors were a dark purple. Tenten was strung up in the forest with a multitude of weapons sticking out of her, while deep none were overly life-threatening if she was found within an hour. Niji was near the battle, stuck in a pile of lumber that was once the fence. Niji had used his body to take a blow that was meant for Tenten. Tenten then went to attack using her weapons, but ended with her weapons being blown back at her. Kurenai was the least beaten out of the bunch. While she may be the jounin, she was not a combat expert. Her uniform was ruffled, her hair was a mess, but her body had no marks. Kurenai let her emotions get the best of her as she witnessed Kiba and Akamaru be beaten unconscious. Then as she watched Shino get buried in the ground by a flaming fist, she lost her control. She charged in, but like before, Naruto didn't lay a single hand on her that would do permanent damage. He was able to knock her with a strong punch to her head, but not enough to do any lasting harm to her. Naruto then did something unexpected. He dumped her unconscious form on the ground in front of Tsunade. Tsunade, who was still trying to heal Jiraiya and Kurenai as well. Tsunade felt helpless as she watched multiple people throw themselves at the warrior that they had come to plead with. She had come here hoping that maybe bloodshed could be avoided, but no. There was nothing but blood and bruises. Naruto was surrounded in a circle by Minato with his signature kunai out. Kakashi and Sasuke had their sharingans out blazing at their adversary. Narumi has the sword in a ready position. Lee and Guy were in the Genken stance. Asuma had his twin blades out coated in wind chakra. Lastly, Shikamaru was in a kneeling position, ready to use his clan jutsu for support. The ground, which was once green with grass and life, was now bare. Small fires decorate the ground, and craters were all over. Naruto was in a ready stance as well, his left fist balled out in front of him and his right arm back next to his ear. What's wrong? You guys getting tired? He mocked. While he may be a battle-hardened warrior, still taking on several high-ranking shinobi was taking a toll on him. He was able to deliver the damage, but the numbers against him were of quality. Minato stepped forward. This has to stop. Minato then pointed out the damage done by the surrounding area. Look at the damage done around here. He then pointed over to the wounded being tended to look at what you have done to the others. Is this what you want? Is this what you want? Naruto fired back. You came to me, and you started this fight. Don't be pissed at me because I'm ending it. Kakashi called out, Naruto, enough of this. We don't need to do this. He took a step towards the younger man, but stopped when he looked at the warning glare by his one-time ward. You made your choice when you let that pervert attack my home, and the pale freak went running to find leverage. Naruto yelled back. Naruto, Nai, please, we won't hurt you. Narumi had tears rolling down her cheeks. She just wanted her family back together, and her oldest brother didn't seem to want that. She made a promise to her mother, herself, her little sister and her father that she would bring the family back together. She may be shedding tears, but she made a promise, and Narumi never goes back on her word. Just come home. Like hell. I am not going back. You will have to drag me back broken and bloody first, Naruto countered. The decision was then made for Narumi, who wiped her eyes with her sleeve, and then she narrowed her eyes. Her resolve was set. Then I know what have to do. Fine, then bring it. I am all fired up. Naruto kicked off the ground and went like a missile towards his sister, who went into a more rooted stance and shot out at him. Naruto reached his arm back, electricity sparking around it, and Narumi stabbed her sword forward. What if neglected Naruto was adopted by a dragon? Thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys in the next video.